First time to Lillooet was last year. I think last May, so about a year ago. For this week, we're going to be talking about mental health. And I just have a few announcements about the week. So what we're doing this week is we're meeting every night between 5 and 8. There's a free dinner at about 6. And also during the day, if you'd like to book a naturopathic appointment, then I'm available during the day. There's a room here at the Better Living Center where I can see patients starting tomorrow. Tomorrow between 11:30 and 3:30. On Thursday between 10:30 and 4. And on Friday between 10:30 and 4. On Wednesday, thank you to the Better Living Center, we're going to be offering a free in-body assessment, which is the in-body is a type of machine that you step on that weighs you. It will tell you your body fat percentage, the poundage of muscle that you have on your body, the amount of fat that you have on your body, distribution of muscle, right leg, right arm, left arm, your BMI. I don't know if it does visceral fat level, your BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate. Some people call it their metabolism. So it is a full analysis. And then the computer kind of does a final summary of what its recommendation is for gaining muscle or losing fat. So we're offering that for free to anyone who wants to come on Wednesday. You would step on the machine and then afterwards chat with me a little bit. It will print out your results and then we talk about your results. I think those appointments will be 20 to 30 minutes each. Wednesday starting at 10 o'clock, ending at 4 p.m. So the last appointment would be at 3:30. And if you're interested in signing up for that, could you please see Thyra? Thyra is going to have a list of appointments and times, and you can sign up today or tomorrow, anytime before Wednesday at 10 o'clock. And if you happen to forget and then just come Wednesday, I guess you can see if there's a time available at that time. The rest of the week we're talking about mental health, and I will start with this slide here. So we're starting here, mental health, the final frontier. As Thyra said, my name is Dr. Nadine Plummer. I'm a naturopathic doctor, licensed here in BC and licensed in Ontario. Why do I call mental health the final frontier? Well, I'm calling it the final frontier because often when people think of health, they think of physical health. They might think of conditions that they've had in the past. They think of healing, maybe healing a broken bone or something like that. But mental health seems to be the thing that's kind of put on the back burner. And it seems like it's coming to the forefront, especially now since COVID. More people are paying attention to mental health. And I think possibly during that time, a lot of mental health conditions, you might say, might have been triggered. It's hard to be, locked up in your house, sometimes with people you have challenges with. So it sort of brought on a different pandemic, which is now being called the mental health pandemic or epidemic. So I think it will no longer be the final frontier of health, but for quite a while it has been. And I'm glad that we're talking more about it now. This week I want to focus. So today we're basically going to go through what conditions of mental health there are, in case people don't know, depression, anxiety, etc., what the names of the diagnoses are. So it might be a little more clinical today. Hopefully we can still make it fun. But after that, and then at the end of the presentation today, I want to focus on some natural remedies. Of course, if you hear something in my presentation, I'm not necessarily saying go out and try that. I can't recommend anything unless you are a patient and we have a one-on-one appointment, but I will be presenting information based on studies. So at the end of the presentation, I want to talk a little bit about what studies reveal about natural treatments for different conditions. As of tomorrow, I want to focus a little more tomorrow and for the rest of the week on this idea of resilience. Resilience, because it tends to be the thing that can really help with mental health. And resilience is something that we can learn to kind of be stronger in. So, and it's often an aspect of mental health that is just kind of left out. So I want to bring it in to the conversation. Touching on it a little bit today, but tomorrow, etc., we'll be talking about how can we become more resilient. And as we exercise our resilient muscle, then we tend to get better and better mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and also physically. So the question is, in terms of resilience and mental health, how do we get to the other side? And sometimes when you're struggling with a mental health condition or even something that's not supposed to happen, something that's not been diagnosed, but you feel it, maybe you haven't been diagnosed with depression, but you're going through a time of depression in your life or something that makes you anxious and is going on for longer than a day, it might be weeks, etc. It feels like you're on one side of a chasm and you just want to figure out, how do I get back to where I was, or how do I get through this to the other side? And that's what this picture represents. So hopefully we'll be talking about how to make that leap to the other side so that we can continue to move forward. Boom. So the general idea with mental health is that mental health affects our physical health, and of course our physical health can affect our mental health. And mental health affects our physical health through our nervous system, meaning our parasympathetic nervous system or our sympathetic nervous system, also known as our fight or flight nervous system, which is definitely a factor, especially when it comes to anxiety. And stress is definitely a factor on mental health. Often when I'm seeing a patient and they will talk about a condition, I'll say, okay, well, when did that first start? And it started about 6 years ago. Okay. What was happening in your life 6 years ago? Oh, I can't remember. It's so long ago. I was like, if you had to, or maybe, just for my sake during this appointment, try to think back 6 years ago. And nearly always there's some kind of stressful event. I got divorced, sold my house, we relocated, my daughter left and went to university, and I found that really hard. Like, whatever it was, it's some kind of very stressful event that could be seen as a life changer in some ways. And that stress, the stress or anxiety or psychological toll of that event often is the beginning of a physical condition. So there's definitely a relationship between our mental health and our physical health, and a relationship between our physical health and our mental health. You could say that our thoughts direct the chemicals in our body. So we're going to do a little experiment. The experiment, just starting with the experiments off the bat, is to, and don't worry, we'll do a different experiment after this. I want you to close your eyes and think of something really, really, really terrible. Something really terrible in your life, or something terrible that happened to you. Really, really terrible, if you don't mind. Okay, you can open your eyes now. And how many people feel good right now? Probably not. Did anyone have any physical symptoms like, oh, I feel a little bit of nausea, or my shoulder hurts, or anything like that? Maybe we didn't sit. Yes? What did you feel? Mm. Oh my gosh. Okay.
read that, ran across it today. It brings it back.
Right.
I feel, I feel
Sad.
really sad that such a thing is happening.
Yeah. So our state of mind can change in a matter of moments. And if you sat in that thought for long enough, you'd probably maybe have some physical symptoms as well. Depending on what it is, if it's something very personal that you're struggling with, sometimes people start sweating a little bit. They might get butterflies, feel nauseous. Some people get a headache. So we're going to do the same thing now. I want you to close your eyes and think of something really, really wonderful. Really wonderful. Whether it's personal or not, something really wonderful. Okay, you can open your eyes. And how do you feel now? Better than last time, right? A change within moments. Did anybody feel lighter in their bodies? A little bit lighter? Often when we're thinking of really wonderful things, you have a light feeling. And sometimes when you're thinking of really intense things, you have a heavy feeling. And as that goes on, you can imagine if you're thinking of really intense things every day for a month or so, and then people tend to start getting tension in their neck, muscle pain, pain in the top of their shoulders, headaches, etc. But usually, often it's the thoughts and what's happening in their lives. That's one of the signs of anxiety. Anxiety is like a mind-body type of condition. The anxiety in your mind, but also the pain going down the back of the neck, a lot of tension in the back of the neck and the shoulders in particular, headaches, and a wobbly stomach. Those are all signs of anxiety. I see you chuckling there, Terrence. Does that sound about right? Something like that. I remember the first time I had a patient like that. She had IBS, and often with IBS, there's a little bit of anxiety just because of the main nerve that runs through our entire body and goes up to our brain called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve has a connection with the gut and a connection with the brain. So she had a lot of bowel issues, diarrhea, constipation, etc., anxiety, heart palpitations, and then the pain in the shoulders, the pain going up the neck. And I was like, wow, all of these things must be somehow connected. It was the first IBS patient that I'd had. So I was treating her with doing cupping. I do cupping, massage, Chinese medicine cupping. Does anybody know where that is? Where you're putting the suction cups. And I would do cupping going up and down her neck. You can do a massage type of cupping using essential oils. Peppermint essential oil is very good for pain. And lavender is good as an anti-anxiety type of medicine. I brought some lavender today. And so that everyone can smell it at the end of this presentation and feel very calm. And it went away. And I was like, that's amazing. Except the next time she came back, I'd have to do the body work again. And the next time, and every week she was coming back and getting relief. And then within, a day, the same thing again. So I started talking to her about the gut-brain axis, and we discussed anxiety, and I put her on a gut formula. So through discussion about the issues, anxiety and things that were happening in her life, physical massage, and also treating with the gut, then finally everything just went away after about 4 months. And I was like, praise the Lord, that worked. But it just showed the connection between the thoughts, the body, the muscles, the gut, everything all working together. So I want to do another quick demonstration, just so I'm not just talking, but you're experiencing it. So in this demonstration, I want you to put your arms out like this, and your shoulders back, and a big smile. Okay, now tell me how you feel. Good. Awesome. No terrible in the room. Okay. And now I want you to put your arms in and crunch your shoulders down. And put your hand on your forehead like this. Randy, don't say you feel good. You're supposed to feel bad. Except for Randy. How do you feel now? This is supposed to be a no laughing posture. Anyone? Yeah. Yes. Right. Unless you have a bilateral shoulder pain. Yes. Yeah. All right. So if you don't have shoulder pain and you do that, or you can just do this if your shoulders hurt, and usually you feel better. Exactly. That's not a posture of anxiety, depression, low mood, but this is. So if you were to picture somebody in your mind with depression, do you think they'd be speaking quickly or slowly? Would their shoulders, unless there's a physical reason why, be hunched over, or they're holding their shoulders back? Hunched over. Would they be walking slowly or quickly? Slowly. So it's like with depression, everything slows down. But the interesting thing, as you just experienced, most of you hopefully, is that you can change your state. I'm not saying it's an answer forever, but you can change your state of mind through your physical body within moments. So when you are having a difficult time, it might not be the time where you feel like it, or your mood is low, or you're in the middle of a very stressful situation. That's the time to kind of make yourself use your body to help kick yourself out of that mood. So using your posture to help shift your mood. What's that all about? Like, how dare you be happy at this moment? Yes. But just in doing that, you are kicking your brain out of a stress state into an unstressed state, and that argument will be a lot more logical than emotional. So shifting the nervous system, you can do it through your body, or putting yourself into a poor state, you can do it through your mind. So there's a lot more power that we have. When you're doing it through your body, so let's say it's a stressful day at work or in a relationship with something, or things just seem to be going south that day. That's when you think, you know what, I'm going to use my body to help me to cope or be resilient in this situation. There are a few things you can do. What we just did is one. Another thing you can do is you can use breathing. And breathing basically shifts you out of a nervous system state of fight or flight. But breathing can also shift you in a nervous system state of fight or flight. To get yourself out, you want to make sure your exhalation is longer than your inhalation. So basic breathing, you might breathe in for a count of 4, but then breathe out for a count of 7 or 8. So a really long breath out. Shorter breath in, long breath out. That literally shifts your nervous system out of that stress state into a relaxed state. If you did it the opposite way, like you're feeling too relaxed and you're about to go and, I don't know, give a speech to 100 people and you want to get all fired up and pumped up, then you would do it the opposite way, which would be a long breath in, short breath out. All right, let's go and do it. So I'll have to do it the opposite way. Just calm myself down now. But you can use your breath. You can use your body. So this brain-body connection is within our control to a certain extent. Why do you think doing this? If I do it long enough, everybody will smile, actually. Because we have mirror neurons in our brain that mirror what you're seeing. I won't stand up here all night, though. Well, fortunately, I don't have shoulder pain, so. But why do you think that makes a difference? Any guesses? Just what I'm doing with my posture, my upper body, my arms, my face. Right? Yes. And what do you think's happening in your body to make you feel happy, aside from mirroring, your brain's mirroring what you see? What's that? Chemical changes, exactly. Chemical changes based on your body's posture. So the way that you hold your body actually causes the secretion of different chemicals from your brain flooding through your body, and those chemicals affect your feelings. So you can control to a certain extent your feelings, let's say, or your emotions through your body, because you want your body to cause different chemicals to be secreted. Does that make sense? When you're stuck in a low mood, though, yes, exactly. That's exactly it. And that's my line there. Our thoughts direct the chemicals of our body. See how I brought it all around to there? Which means I'm about to change the slide. Um, but it's tough when you're in that lower mood to think, okay, now I want to smile, and you don't feel like smiling. But if you can just muster a smile or holding your body in a different posture, the chemicals will start. And those main chemicals are serotonin. Serotonin is the happiness hormone or the energy hormone. Dopamine. Dopamine is the pleasure hormone, but used in the wrong way, it's the addiction or reward hormone. And endorphins. Endorphins are natural chemicals that make you feel less or no pain. Overall, they're called the bliss chemicals. So through your posture, you change the chemicals being secreted in your brain and body, then you feel better. It works the other way as well. Our thoughts direct the chemicals of our body. So when you're in that posture, just as you said, Glenn, and you're like this and you're worrying and holding yourself like that for long enough, then your brain's going to secrete other chemicals, cortisol, adrenaline, etc., that are going to keep you stuck in that mood. They have a place. They help you get out of dangerous situations. But if you stay there long enough, then you get kind of stuck. So I just wanted everyone to experience that. And hopefully, I don't know, I'm not hoping that you're in a stressful situation tomorrow or the day after. But if you are, smile, go upright. Or if you can't, then take a moment out, do the breathing. Short in breath out for a count of 4, long breath. Short in breath in your nose for a count of 4, long breath out. A couple of those, and it'll just calm everything down. Our thoughts direct the chemicals of our body. We have learned to balance and manage stress. I said that with a lot of my patients when I go back and I say, well, what was happening at that time at the beginning of this condition? There's a very stressful occurrence. And the way that we deal with stress, at least from what I've found in the Western world, is we just learn to manage it. You've got to keep on going, keep going. That's the brave thing to do. And I'm not saying don't keep going, but you want to progress through, like that picture, to get to the other side, instead of just managing the whole time and you're just above the surface, keeping yourself from going under, like this person on a log. Like as soon as you stop, you're dropping in. So we've managed to learn, we're learning to balance and manage stress in a way where we don't progress, we don't go under, we're just making it. And doing that is stressful on its own. So hopefully we can find a different approach. Part of that different approach is actually addressing the root cause. Like, what is it that's causing you to feel the way that you're feeling, to respond the way you're responding? And often with my patients, I'll do a little bit of digging. Sometimes they like it, sometimes they don't. But I want to get to the root cause of what's causing this physical condition or the emotional condition, or maybe the emotional condition is causing the physical condition. But we want, with a final goal, to be transformation and not just learning to manage. Does that make sense? As naturopathic doctors, that is one of our key foundational steps in medicine. Naturopathic doctors treat the root cause, maybe I might have to give some recommendations for the now. But while we're dealing with the now, we want to get to what is the thing that's causing whatever you're experiencing in the first place. And sometimes that includes some counseling, it includes some homework. I give a lot of homework to my patients. And it might include dietary changes, lifestyle changes, and it might also include thinking changes. And so those are some of the things we're going to talk about this week. Don't worry, it's not going to all be heavy all week. We have some fun too. But these are very serious topics. So I said that that kind of stress or that those kind of chemicals, so you said they're toxic. I said they have a place. So those chemicals are secreted during a fight or flight kind of condition. And they help us to get out of danger, basically. So fight or flight is when there's a threat. Here it is a saber-toothed tiger. It could be a wild deer. I saw an amazing deer the other day, like the full, full horns. So obviously it was a male. Antlers, thank you, not horns. Full antlers. So if a full antlered deer kind of crashed in here right now, you would probably have this kind of response. Like in a second, you're figuring out, do I stay here or do I run as fast as I can? Who would run? Just out of curiosity. You feed them grapes? Is that the answer? Well, that's a very logical response. So that's not the typical fight or flight response. So for the interesting thing about fight or flight, a bear is a different story? Yes. A bear. Okay. Awesome. Actually, this is a very good example of a fight or flight situation because stress is not so much whatever the outside factor is, it's how we respond inside. So if Randy and I were both sitting on the porch and we both see a bear, I would be freaking out. So I would have a fight or flight response. And Randy would not have a fight or flight response. He would have a parasympathetic nervous system response, which is, people call it rest and digest, or they call it the chill mode. So one person's relaxed, one person is not relaxed. And those chemicals of stress would be going through my body, cortisol, adrenaline. I might get sweaty. I might find that my breathing is going quickly. My heart is racing. And somebody else would be like, not a big deal. So stress, so many things that kind of direct the way we're responding. But the interesting thing is everyone could be having the same outer experience, but not having the same inner experience. So part of resilience is actually learning to respond differently to what people call stress. So basically, the fight or flight response is a response in the body where your brain starts secreting cortisol and adrenaline. It makes you very, very aware, but it also pumps a lot of blood to your hands, to your feet, to your arms, your legs. So you're ready to fight or you're ready to run away. And our brain responds a little bit differently during fight or flight or during a stress response. One of the main chemicals that's secreted, so I said your thoughts direct your chemicals. So my thought might be, oh my gosh, I'm about to be attacked by that bear. This is a huge threat. Like, I'm never going to see my mom again, blah, 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 blah. It would go on and on. Should I run away? If I run, the bear's going to run after me. Should I play dead? So all of those thoughts would direct the chemicals. So I'd have a lot of cortisol and adrenaline being flowing through my body at that time. If you look at this slide, stress is something that could either be a burden to you. So I would have a fight or flight response. So that's burdensome. Or it's something, for some people, it would drive their behavior. Like, this is amazing. All right, of course, that's like somebody who's familiar with bears. Let's get a picture and let me go and get some grapes and things like that. So it's the same, if it's the same ball though, the exact same thing, two different responses.
I've heard
Go ahead.
that before every concert, so not well known, John Lennon would throw up.
Okay.
In other words, he's having a powerful stress response.
Yes.
I've also read about Bruce Springsteen. He
Right.
The same as the bear sort of thing. I mean,
Right. Right before one person's experiencing a lot of anxiety
right.
and the other person is
Having
excited about
probably
it.
the same adrenaline and cortisol response, but
Yeah. It's interesting about vomiting because, and sorry, just talking about this 20 minutes before dinner. Um,
just don't talk
but
about when we're having.
I won't, not, so this is a good time. Because part of the stress response is like the butterflies in the stomach and feeling a little bit of nausea. So obviously he was having a stress response right before going on. The cortisol is something, so a lot of cortisol was probably being released. But in some ways, it would help because you become very focused on the present moment. You become so focused on the present moment that your eyes begin to dilate. So you can tell if someone's really stressed. If you're having a conversation, and it would probably be a difficult conversation for this to happen, and you look in their eyes, and it's not dark, it's like lit like this, and their eyes are dilated, and of course they're not on any kind of substance that would cause that, and their eyes get really, really black. That means that they're having a stress response. And you might say, "Are you okay?" And they'll probably say, "Yeah, I'm okay, no problem." But their body's telling you, no, they're feeling threatened in this conversation. Yes.
It's a while ago, but in 13 months time, I lost my father and just born son
Oh, I'm sorry.
and my mother. In
And your
13 months.
brother, you said?
And my mother.
Your
yeah.
mother. Wow.
So that created me stomach ulcers.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So that was a very stressful time for you.
Yeah.
And there was a belief at a time that stress did cause ulcers.
Yeah.
And then the belief about that changed to, H. pylori, which is a pathogenic bacteria in the stomach and gut. H. pylori causes ulcers. But now they know that stress actually blunts the immune system, so your immune system's not actually able to fight H. pylori. And then H. pylori overpopulates, and then you get an ulcer. So stress is definitely a factor in ulcers. But now they understand, like, the pathway, how it works. I'm sorry to hear that, Henry. Very, very stressful time.
It's a while ago.
Yeah. So actually, ulcers were one of the key things, maybe in the 1960s, 1970s, that doctors at that time, I think maybe they spent more time with their patients, would talk about what level of stress are you under. You don't want to get an ulcer. But now they give you a medication for that, and maybe they're not talking to you as much. Maybe some good doctors are, which is important. But cortisol has that effect on the system. So in the moment, it's going to help you get out of that difficult situation. But over time, it's probably somehow going to make you sick. And we'll talk about the ways that it does make you sick, like getting an ulcer. Cortisol is released at the time where you're feeling that stress to help you survive. It's a hormone that's released during a fight or flight response, during times when we're feeling stressed. But what if you have fight or flight daily? Or what if it's an ongoing, difficult, stressful situation every day, day in, day out, and your stress is just elevated over time? Then it's not going to work for you. It's going to work against you. And these are the ways that it works against you. And I'm saying this because we want to get to the point where we're, let's say, addressing instead of managing stress better so that we can stay healthy and have better mental health. Cortisol over time counteracts insulin. Therefore, we have increased glucose or an increased sugar level in the blood. If you have a long, ongoing increased sugar levels in your blood, like over a long period of time, what disease does that put you at risk for? Type 2 diabetes, exactly.
the obesity.
We're getting to that. Cortisol suppresses the immune system, so Henry, that's what happened with you. And if your immune system's suppressed over time, then you're at risk for a number of things: viruses, bacteria, infections. So with an ulcer, that bacteria is called H. pylori. So H. pylori infection, and if it's there for long enough, it actually eats away at the lining of the stomach or the small intestine, which is an ulcer. Cortisol over time affects the metabolism of fats. Oops. Oh. Okay, I'm hoping everything's not going to... Am I stressed right now? Just for a second, there was a little bit... I was sweating just for a second. It worked out. It affects the metabolism of fats, proteins, and carbs. So we're basically not metabolizing our food really well, and it increases our appetite and increases the storage of unused nutrients as fat, which puts us at risk for obesity or weight gain. The other thing that cortisol can do over time is it can cause our blood pressure to go up. So, does stress affect the body? Does the body respond to stress? Yes, and over time, I mean, there's so many other things that happen, but basically over time you're at risk for type 2 diabetes, for suppressed immune system, infections, viruses, bacteria, and for obesity, as well as many other factors. So is it important to learn to address stress? Very important. Did you have a comment?
No, I'm just wondering
Mm-hmm.
when we'll learn how to address stress, because I've tried stress go away,
Mm-hmm.
and it has.
Come back another day.
Exactly.
Janie wants to go out and play. Right.
You know the whole point.
I do.
So yeah, I can't wait to learn.
So we just, but you missed it. But at the beginning, we just learned a few things, which I can reiterate. So during a stressful situation, but sometimes there are stressful life situations that are going on and on. So you have to actually practice stress reduction techniques literally every day. Like the way that people go out to exercise. I mean, exercise is one thing that brings more bliss hormones, those chemicals, and brings down the stress hormone. Breathing, so you're taking shorter breaths in, longer breaths out. So a breath in of like a count of 4 in the mouth, but a really long breath out. I had a patient who was talking about smoking recently. I'm wondering if we talked about that on the other day, talking about smoking recently. Oh, this was actually an actual patient, actually. We might have talked about it as well. And I was saying, of course, encouraging them to quit smoking. And they said, but smoking really helps to reduce my stress. So I'm having a stressful day at work. I go out, I take a break, I have a smoke, and then I come back and I feel like, okay, I can deal with what's happening at work, and then I feel stressed again, and so they go for another smoke break, and then they come back and their day goes on like that, and they're getting extra time that people who don't smoke are not getting, but that's another story. But what I said was it's really interesting about smoking, because when you're smoking, you're actually forcing yourself to breathe. So you're taking a breath in, then most people take like a really long breath out as they're breathing out the smoke. And then they're taking a breath in, another long breath out. Sometimes they're making rings or whatever shapes with the smoke, and another long breath out. And I said, you know what? You could actually quit smoking. Of course, she was like, I don't like that part of this, but quit smoking, but keep doing the breathing. Because part of the relaxation that you're feeling, yes, nicotine in part, but the other is just the breathing that you're doing. Like every 30 to 45 minutes, you're doing a breathing exercise. You're reducing your stress. Then it goes up again, and then you're reducing your stress. So she said, oh, that's interesting. Okay, I'll try it. I said, just try the breathing without the smoking. And I advised some other things for quitting smoking. We'll see. She said she's going to try the breathing. So shorter breath in the nose for a count of 4, really long exhalation out. You can imagine your breath going la 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 la. And it's very, very calming. You'd have to do that several times per day. And of course, we're going to talk about exercise as well. So we talked about posture, smiling. We talked about breathing, and we're going to talk about some other tools and techniques as we continue to go along. Yes, Henry?
In that time, I was a smoker.
You were a smoker?
Yes,
Okay.
and I rolled my own cigarettes.
Mhm.
It calmed me down.
Count me down?
It was a pleasure to roll my cigarettes.
Calm-
and then have a
calming you
nice
down.
puff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just rolling the cigarettes would calm you down.
Yeah.
Because you knew what was coming.
Looking forward to have another
Yes.
puff.
Yeah. There's a whole ritual about
Yes.
cigarette smoking, which is why when I'm encouraging people to quit, we have to find something for them to do with their hands, because and their mouths as well, because part of smoking is you have something in your hand and now there's nothing. So people often substitute that thing in their hands with potato chips so we try to find something else. Knitting. Actually, my brother quit smoking through knitting. And he was just knitting. We all got scarves for Christmas, hats for Christmas. I got sweaters. Then he started teaching knitting at the seniors knitting club. He was quite young, and it was funny to have this guy teaching all the older ladies knitting. But he had to do something with his hands to get accustomed to not having a cigarette in them. And eventually he quit. Praise the Lord. So dealing with stress is very important. If not, then there are physical concerns. An ulcer's prime example, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, viruses, bacteria, a poor immune system, immunocompromised. What's happening in the brain during stress? You have a thought. My thought with the bear is, that bear is about to attack me. So I have a thought that is a threat. But that thought could be, I got a bill in the mail, and this bill is a threat to my financial stability. And you see the bill and you start sweating, it's from the bank, or it's from the government. And that could start a fight or flight response. Whatever it is, it's a thought, and part of that thought is it's threatening something. And immediately an area in the brain that's called the amygdala, it's like the emotion center, kicks in. And the emotion center kind of sounds the alarm, or begins this whole cascade in the brain, which then affects the body, and then the chemicals of stress are released. So the brain triggers an area in the brain. The amygdala triggers an area in the brain called the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus releases something, triggers an area in the brain called the anterior pituitary. It triggers an area that's actually not in the brain, but here, just above our kidneys, called the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands respond by starting to secrete these chemicals. More adrenaline, more cortisol, more adrenaline. All of that happens super fast, just based on this thought. The interesting thing, and I won't do it with you because I already made you think of uncomfortable, unhappy things, is if you just sit and you think of something really stressful that's stressing you out. It might be school, it might be your kids, it might be your finances. And this is what we tend to do. Sometimes we ruminate, and we're ruminating on that stressful thing. And as we're doing that, our brain doesn't know, is this situation happening right now? Did it happen 10 years ago? Is it something that a trauma from 20 years ago? Your brain doesn't know. You're the one kind of controlling it with your thoughts. So it could be something physical, where you have a physiological response based on something physical, or something emotional. Just by your thoughts, this whole cascade will happen. And you sit in whatever that thing is, and if you do that long enough, that's going to affect your mental health.
Doing this, though,
Mm-hmm.
shows the way out. I mean, if you have
Exactly.
positive thoughts,
Ooh.
the brain is going to generate the kind
All
of
right.
chemistry that positive.
You know what? The week's over. There's the answer right there.
Okay, so I reckon
Exactly. So you know that through thinking that way, this cascade's happening, and the more it's happening, the more you're going to get stuck in the cascade. Like a relay race, except the relay race never ends. The fourth person just hands the baton back to the first, and it keeps on going. So the opposite thing,
Like analyzing it too.
over analyzing again and again. Not saying that things don't need to be addressed, but sometimes when we're really sitting in something, especially something from the past, then this can keep happening and keep happening. And before you know it, your brain automatically goes there, and you have that response. And then you're kind of in a semi-alert, people call it hypervigilance. You're in a hypervigilant state all the time. And those people say, I'm just highly wired, or, I'm just a tight person. But usually there's something there that's continuing to make them that way. It could be even from decades ago. So how do you reverse it? I mean, it's a little bit more than just a positive thought, but in the moment, you can kick yourself out of that state with a positive thought. You can kick yourself out of that state through changing your posture. It will work momentarily, or you can kick yourself out of that state with the breathing, or you can kick yourself out of that state where it lasts longer with exercise. So as you're ruminating about this thing, whatever it is, kind of like, a cow chewing on their cud, and you're ruminating about it, you can go for a walk. As you're walking, those chemicals are going to start to kick in. And the chemicals of some dopamine, serotonin, endorphins. And often as you're walking, I call it leaving the stress on the treadmill. If you picture a treadmill, it's like everything's falling. All of those heavy thoughts are falling and whew, they're going out the back of the treadmill. By the end of the walk, hopefully, especially if it's 30 to 45 minutes of continuous walking, those hormones are kicking in and you're going to feel much better about that situation, even if it was something from decades ago. And even if it's something recent, at least it gives you a little window of breath from whatever that stressful situation is that you're in or that you used to be in. Walking also gives you a different perspective. It's kind of like what happens to us when we're in the shower, when you take a hot shower. So one of the things that helps with stress is just taking a nice relaxing bath, a warm bath with a little bit of lavender, because lavender is an anxiolytic. An anxiolytic is something that calms the mind or calms the nervous system. But your brain goes into a state called a theta wave state, meaning it's just in a creative state. We're also in that state right before we fall asleep. So that's why in the shower, you might suddenly feel better if you're taking a hot shower. And then you get the answers like, oh, I know, I need to do this, this, this. Then you get out of the shower, you get dressed, you're on your way to work, you've forgotten all those wonderful solutions. Or in the hot bath, or right before bed. It's like, oh, eureka, I've got it. Then you fall asleep and you don't remember the next day. Yes, you can write it down. But you're changing the wave of your brain, and you're also changing your stress response. So walking doesn't quite change your brain waves that way. The hot bath might. But walking causes those wonderful bliss hormones to be secreted. So that's a great option for getting you out of stress. It might not change the situation, but it changes how you see the situation. It can even change how you see a situation from a decade ago or 2 decades ago. But we're going to talk a little more about that as we continue on this week, because part of mental health is also perhaps digging up some things that might be causing us to be depressed, things, difficult things from the past. Yes? Mm. You'll get there eventually if you keep going. Yeah. Great. Any other comments? I think we have 3 minutes before the food's coming out, and I maybe have time for another slide, or? Okay. So that's the HPA relay. This is just something.
What does the HPA stand for?
Hypothalamus. Let's go here. It stands for hypothalamus, anterior pituitary, HPA, hypothalamus, anterior pituitary.
Oh, the amygdala's in there somehow?
The amygdala is at the very, very beginning. It kind of kicks, it's like the person who goes, go, and then the relay starts.
So we're putting the word anterior after the word pituitary.
Adrenal. Yeah. The adrenal glands, which are sitting right on top of the kidneys. Hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal. And then before you know it, your bloodstream is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. This is what we'll skip the next slide. What is it going to do in your body? Might be hard to see what's happening here. But on the red side, that's a sympathetic response when you are stressed out. On the blue side, that is a parasympathetic response where you're feeling really relaxed. So I said, if you were talking to someone and they say they're fine, but you see that their eyes are dilated, they're having a sympathetic or a fight or flight response. They're stressed out, even though they're telling you they're fine. For people who have stage fright, is there anyone here who has stage fright or doesn't like talking in front of big crowds? Yes and yes. So right before you go to talk to a big crowd and you go to speak, what do you notice?
Sweat.
Okay, sweating. Yes. Anything else? What's that? Shaking. Excellent. Okay, that happens. Anything else?
Stomach.
The stomach is wobbly. Anything else? There's something that happens that makes it hard to speak. Hold on, let me get a sip of water.
The throat.
You could dry, yeah.
Ah. Oh, there you go. That was my hint right there.
Yeah, I figured that one out.
Your mouth gets dry. Your mouth gets dry because during a sympathetic nervous system response or fight or flight response, the salivary glands, and we have several. The biggest is just here on the other side of our cheek, called the parotid gland. We have submandibular glands right underneath our chin as well. They're secreting saliva, and when you're stressed out, your salivary secretion kind of comes to a halt. So it's like my mouth has sand in it, so your mouth gets very, very dry. Why do you think your mouth would get dry when you're stressed out? This is a bit of a relay answer, but I'm just seeing if anybody.
Breathing.
Breathing?
Breathing faster.
Okay, your breathing accelerates as well. But there's a particular reason why your mouth gets dry and your salivary glands aren't working the way they normally would.
Well, I've heard that when you're in a stressful situation, the
Yep.
blood concentrates in the places that will be most useful to deal with the stress.
Okay.
So you withdraw the blood from, probably, or the chemistry from the parts of the body that need it.
Right. Okay. That's part of the answer. So, what's that? I didn't say it. I don't think so. Yeah, the parotid gland's on the other side of the cheek, and it's not going to secrete a lot of saliva. But when you're in a stressful situation, basically your body's going to send the blood to where it's needed to get out of the stressful situation. So hands, feet, arms, and legs, basically. So you have more peripheral blood flow, not a lot
So you
in
can
the
run.
stomach area, so you can run and get away. It's not the time to be digesting food. So you're not a lot of blood flow going to the digestive organs. And one of the first steps in digestion is actually the breakdown of carbohydrates in the mouth via the saliva. So the saliva has an enzyme in it called salivary amylase, and that enzyme actually breaks down carbohydrates. So when you're stressed, it is not the time to be digesting food at all. It's the time for all of the energy to be focused on helping you to get away, because digestion takes up a lot of energy, blood flow, enzymes, etc. So that's one of the reasons why you don't have a lot of saliva when you're stressed. Not the time to digest, is the time to run away. And I see some amazing looking meals coming out. Which reminds me of salivary amylase, which we're going to talk about how to eat your food in a way where you'll get better digestion. So that's why saliva is low when you're stressed, because your body's saying this is not the time to digest anything. It's the time to get out of this situation. But sometimes when you're stressed, like you have to stand there in front of that big crowd and talk, you can't get out of the situation. And that's the time where you use the breathing method to calm your nervous system down. So you get out of the red zone and you go into the blue zone, where suddenly your heart slows down and you don't get the wobbly stomach anymore, and your hands stop trembling, and you stop sweating, and you're relaxed but still in the moment. So other things that happen when you're stressed, as you said, I think everyone said most of the things. You've got accelerated breathing, heart palpitations. That's a picture of the liver. That red thing that looks like a triangle is 2 down from the lungs. Your liver gets very active when you're stressed. So your liver is triggered to take its stored sugar, which is in the form of glycogen, to convert it into glucose and to actually secrete it into the bloodstream. So you have a lot of energy to run away. The pancreas is active. Your stomach actually gets less active. So when people have ongoing stress, often they have problems going to the bathroom, like constipation. If there is an immediate stress, it might go the other way, but we won't talk about that with the food coming out. But ongoing stress, like people who have anxiety, that it might go either way, but when people have a very stressful situation in their lives, sometimes they're just like they're going to the bathroom every 3 days or so instead of every day. So the motility in the stomach is slowed down. So your stomach works in a way where it has a muscular lining. Our esophagus has a muscular lining. Our intestines have a muscular lining. When we're eating, that muscular lining is contracting and relaxing, pushing the food down your throat, pushing the food through the stomach, pushing through the small intestines, and then large intestine and out. And that contraction is called peristalsis. When you're stressed, that's not really happening. And some people will say, it's like my food is just sitting in my stomach. And I'll say, okay, well, let's talk about your stress levels, what's happening in your life right now. So that motility is slowed down. And of course, some people might find it difficult to reproduce during really stressful times in their lives, so it can affect fertility as well. I'll wait until everyone has their food, and then we're going to say a prayer. And then I'm going to talk about how to have better digestion in a relaxed, let's say the blue over here, in a relaxed state or parasympathetic state. Yeah, you're going to start by smiling. And that affects your digestive enzymes. I think we have maybe 2 more dishes coming out. 1 more dish for you coming out. You're not eating? Okay. In that case, actually, I think everyone, is there anyone here who has not received their food? Okay. Let's start with a prayer then. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for this wonderful food. We ask and pray that it will be blessed, that it will be holy, that it will be good for our bodies. We thank you for the hands that prepared it. And we say things in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, enjoy your food. However, there are a few different ways of eating so you'll have better digestion. Oh, okay, thank you. A few different ways of eating so you have better digestion. Even just in praying or taking a few moments to do some deep breaths, a short breath in the nose, long breath out the mouth, that shifts your body into parasympathetic state, so you're going to have more saliva, you'll have more enzymes, more hydrochloric acid, and better digestion. So doing a little bit of breathing before, this is one of the reasons why prayer is good, because prayer puts you into a parasympathetic state. And then once you start eating, you want to chew your food and keep chewing and chewing and chewing and chewing, so that the saliva will break down the food in the mouth, and then you slowly swallow. And also, don't eat fast. Thank you. I was getting there. You want to eat slowly. As I said, there's an enzyme in the saliva called salivary amylase. It helps with the breakdown of carbohydrates, but it's also antibacterial. So you've got your own mechanism in your mouth of basically cleaning your food because the food does have bacteria on it, as nearly everything does. I'm not saying this food has more bacteria than normal, but you want it to stay in your mouth so the saliva can clean it, so that it can help with the breakdown of carbohydrates, and it should stay in your mouth until it's like applesauce, let's say. Then you swallow. That makes for a very long dinner time. I could talk to you about
People eat fast, they'll complain about that.
if you eat too fast, they're going to complain.
They'll complain about the people who eat slow.
Oh, right. Actually, when I was growing up, I grew up with 2 brothers, and I was the slowest eater. So the rule was the first people to finish helped the last, and I was a very skinny kid, so which meant my brothers were always eating my food. So yes, the people who are finished first complain that you're too slow, but you can just let them know, you know what? I have better digestion than you do because I'm eating slowly. The other thing is you take in fewer calories. You tend to be able to detect when you're full more readily than when you're eating really, really quickly. So slow it down. Relish your food. When you're enjoying your food, your brain's going to secrete a chemical called dopamine. And that's going to help to drive the behavior. Your brain's going to think, oh, this food was delicious. I want to eat more salad and plant-based meals. So you want to enjoy your food as you're eating it. Oops. Whoops. Okay, back to the bear example, which actually is just a coincidence that that was brought up because this slide was already in here. Whether you're running from a grizzly, that might be different than a black bear, or you're running to a meeting at work, does your body react the same way? What do you think? I'm going to take a sip of water now. Not because I'm stressed, but because I'm thirsty. Running from a bear or running to a meeting at work. Is your body going to respond the same way?
It could.
Okay. How could it? Oh, yes, you're chewing. No talking when there's food in your mouth.
If I'm running from a bear, I'm fear.
Mhm.
If we're running to work, I'm late, so I'm not fear.
You might be afraid you're gonna get fired.
No, they wouldn't fire me. Well,
Okay. So it depends, right? Your body could respond the same way. If you're running from a bear and you see that bear as a threat, then you're afraid. Then you'd have the stress response we just talked about. If you're running to a meeting at work and you're afraid of your boss, or you're afraid of the deadline, or you're afraid of presenting at the meeting and you're late, your body's going to have a stress response. Somebody else might be running to the meeting at work and be like, I love my job. I can't wait for this meeting. They're not going to have a stress response. So it's just, as we said, it depends on your situation and how you interpret it. But it could be where you have a similar response to both, especially if it's a meeting with your boss and you think that your boss is a bear. There you go.
Most of the
Yes.
times that I've been in a situation where there's a bear that could be dangerous,
Yes.
especially if there's a female bear with
The cubs, yeah.
It's not a situation where I want to run because I don't want to attract her attention.
Ah, okay. Oh, this is grisly information
Well,
here.
it's actually black bear information too.
Yes.
You don't want to mess with the cubs.
Yep.
She takes it as a threat if you, to get her attention, she's liable to
Yep.
deal with it.
Okay.
Or just slowly drift away, if possible.
Right. This was a little bit anecdotal, but yes. So whatever the situation is, it depends on your interpretation of that situation. You could have a similar response or a different response, but really the power of how you respond is in your own thinking. And I think that's the thing that we miss in our society. There are just certain things where you're supposed to be stressed. Like, how is it that you're not stressed about your work? You're supposed to be. And if you're not stressed, there's something wrong with you. As a matter of fact, you get a trophy for being stressed, kind of like that means you're a good worker or you're normal. So one of the things I wanted to encourage is just thinking of, I guess, rethinking our idea of what is normal. So it's not, maybe everybody gets stressed about work, and if you're not stressed, people say, you're in denial. I mean, you might be, I don't know, but it's possible to shift your perspective so you're not having a stressful life experience basically 24/7. I think that's abnormal. Did you have a comment there, Glenn? No?
I'm already commenting too much. I think.
No, I mean, it's interactive. I appreciate the comments because I don't want it to be like I'm lecturing. I mean, I could, but I started off with a demonstration so everyone would feel free to comment. Definitely interactive.
In terms of the commenting,
Hmm.
In battle situations, in war situations,
Yes,
two people can both be in horrific situations. One of them gets post-traumatic stress syndrome, and the other one doesn't.
absolutely. Yeah.
It has something to do probably with their psychological preparation, things that happened in their past,
Hmm.
but not entirely.
Yeah.
They also say that a lot of children have post-traumatic stress syndrome. And
Yeah.
just by going to school,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
There was an interesting study that was done that we'll get into a little more tomorrow or the next day. It was on resilience and stress in children, just as you brought it up. And in this study, this woman studied children for 32 years. And I'll go more into detail tomorrow, but she wanted to kind of assess the stress response and resilience response in children who were growing up in very difficult circumstances, dysfunction, physical, mental abuse, other types of abuse as well, alcoholic parents, divorce, moving, death of parent, etc. Many of the things on the ACEs study, which we'll talk about what that is. But she just wanted to see, is there going to be a group of children who everyone's experiencing this dysfunction to a very high level? What's going to happen to these kids? Is it possible that some of the kids will actually come out without post-traumatic stress syndrome and thrive? And what kids will that happen to? And there was 1/3 in this group of kids who actually were considered to be thriving despite the dysfunction that they grew up with. So she started studying that group. How is it that this group is not having post-traumatic stress disorder, they don't have mental health challenges, and they're thriving throughout their teenage years, very sometimes difficult years, adult years, etc. And that was the beginning of what birthed her ongoing studies on resilience.
It's sometimes called post-traumatic growth syndrome.
You could call it that.
I've heard it called that.
Yep. It's called post-traumatic growth syndrome when you go through a process of reframing, meaning you have a very different perspective on what happened, which is also part of our presentation tomorrow or the next day. But basically, these kids, regardless of what they were experiencing, somehow were not experiencing stress while it was happening and came out of it without dysfunction. And so she was very curious about why are they different and the situation's the same. Yes, go ahead, Randy.
But sometimes later on in life, it may not show it when you're younger, but later on in life, it'll come out on it.
Yes, definitely. So that's why she made it a study of over 3 decades long. And I don't know if she went beyond 32 years, but that's when she started posting her findings. So decades and decades later. And decades later, she did find that 2/3 of that group ended up either going to jail or becoming alcoholics, or they were repeating the pattern if, you know, yeah. No, this is the rest of the group. So it did come out in their lives as teenagers and as adults, but not in this other group. So she wanted it to be a long-term study to see what happens in adulthood. And that kind of gave her some clues to resilience and responding to stress. And we're going to discuss those clues. This is my cliffhanger for coming back tomorrow. So we're going to discuss her findings. Like, why was it that this group of kids actually did okay decades later? They're still okay, which just makes us hopeful. And the bottom line, the conclusion of her study is you can become resilient at any time. Even if you went through a difficult patch, you can learn resilience and learn how to manage things differently. And we can kind of redeem or rejuvenate, resuscitate, let's say, or even resurrect our mental health. So I think that study was really important. So I said that if you approach whatever the situation is in a stressed state, you're working from a stressed brain, And if you're in a stressed brain state every day, that's just going to affect your experience of life. If you're in an unstressed state, you're working from an unstressed brain, and then you have a very different experience and you respond differently. So when the brain is stressed, this area in the brain here, like right about here, if you weren't eating, I'd make you put your hand on there, but you can do that later. This area in the brain is called the prefrontal cortex. And it's believed, not 100% sure, but it's believed that the prefrontal cortex is in charge of deductive reasoning, analysis, including situational analysis. It houses a lot of our personality. So if you've ever known someone who's had a brain trauma, especially if this area was affected, it's like their personality has changed because this area in the brain kind of houses our personality. It's in charge of logical thinking, deductive analysis, reasoning, and decision making, basically. When we're in an unstressed state, that area in our brain is in control, driving the car, let's say, or the bus, or the tractor, or the truck. Maybe truck would be better. Yes?
When we're stressed, does blood flow actually reduce the frontal lobe, or is it just
Oh.
something else mystery-wise makes it less?
I think it's that the amygdala is triggered. I'm not sure about blood flow during stress, but that's a good question. When you're stressed, it's that the amygdala is triggered, so the emotional center is kind of more active than the prefrontal cortex. And once the emotion center or the limbic system in the brain is more active, then the prefrontal cortex is not really making the decisions anymore. So we want to be in an, as much as possible, especially when we're making decisions, in an unstressed brain state. I like the question about blood flow, though. Right, so when you're unstressed, that area in the brain's making decisions. You have better control of your emotions, your actions. When you're stressed, the emotion center in the brain is kind of taking over, and then quickly you'll have that fight or flight response happening. So from the amygdala to the hypothalamus to the anterior pituitary to the adrenal glands to a flood of cortisol, a flood of adrenaline. Weaker control of thoughts, emotions, and actions, and this is where things can escalate or you perceive things differently than when you're in that unstressed brain state. So some of the things we already talked about, doing the breathing, changing your body position, etc., can help shift your brain back to the unstressed state. But also just learning how to respond differently can make a big difference as well. I had read a book, I haven't gotten through it, by Viktor Frankl. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. Has anybody heard of that book? Yes. So there's something that you said about stress and people responding differently to very stressful situations. And Viktor Frankl was an Auschwitz survivor who then became a psychotherapist. And he wanted to know why some people survived during the Nazi camps in Germany. I realize this isn't a happy subject for eating. And why some people didn't survive. And I also heard of another survivor who also became a psychotherapist.
Just
Yes.
a little bit different. He was already a therapist before he went there.
Yes.
So therefore, he would analyze. the
Had a
situation
different view.
and he
Right.
believed he was freer than the guards.
So how did he think he was freer, though?
Because, well, he basically had a different story. He had developed his own narrative of what was going on. He was telling himself, for instance, that how he was going to explain this later. And
Mhm.
things he was going to say to his wife, who had also been put in the same camp,
Mhm.
even though she was already dead. But just the same, he was building his own narrative. And
Right.
He knew he was in danger. I mean, they could hurt him.
Yes.
But nonetheless, he had a story that was quite a positive story.
And his positive story or that narrative was within his own mind, regardless of what was happening to him physically. And it seemed like he had no control, but he had control over his thought process. So he felt like he was free and they were in prison. And I heard something very similar. I can't remember her name. Another Auschwitz survivor who also afterwards practiced psychotherapy and wrote a book. She's actually doing a lot of podcasts now, or at least in the last year, where she had a similar narrative. I'm free and you're in prison. So she would look at the guard and say to herself, you're the prisoner. Regardless of what they were saying to her, she'd listen and think, you're the prisoner, you're the prisoner.
You have to be careful not to share your perspective.
Keeping it in her own mind. But just having that different thought process, a different self-narrative, self-talk, which we're going to be talking about tomorrow as well. Self-talk's very important. They're able to be in what most people would perceive to be a highly stressful, dangerous, maybe even fatal situation, and come out of it and be relatively okay. And a lot of people didn't survive who had a different narrative and perception of what was in their locus of control or not. So what they found with Emmy Warner's study, which is kind of similar, is these children, and as I said, we'll go more into this study tomorrow, they had a stronger locus of control. Your locus of control is your belief about what is in your own power. And for Viktor Frankl and this other psychotherapist, they believed their thoughts and the way that they perceive the situation is in their own power, and that can't be taken away despite the situation. And for these kids, they also found that the kids felt like their lives were in their own power, even though their lives weren't in their own power. But somehow in their minds, they felt like I can make a difference in my life. And that narrative continued throughout their teens, throughout their adulthood, to the point where they could make a difference in their lives. So that was one of the main common denominators that she found. A strong individual inner locus of control. I can make a difference in my life, even if it's within my own mind. That's probably the key factor. So how to get there? I don't know. Maybe we'll figure it out together by the end of the week. But that's one of the most important thoughts to even know in response to stress or in response to your own mental health and the way you walk through life. I feel like we've summed it up right there. But I'll continue on. So does stress affect other things? It's an interesting, I've used the word cascade so far, but stress can be an interesting cascade because it affects so many other things. And when those things are affected, then it can make having a positive outlook so much harder. So stress affects sleep. And when we're getting poor sleep, then the next day you tend to be a little more irritated. You've got a higher level of cortisol. People tend to have cravings and they want to eat things that immediately make them feel better. We perceive things in more of a negative way when we're not getting high quality sleep. So basically ongoing poor quality sleep can definitely affect our mental health. So I want to ask now, and one of the key issues with that is just we're stressed. And then stress affects sleep. And then sleep causes more of a stress response the next day. And it goes on like this. How many people here feel like they have a high quality of sleep? Okay, not bad. Maybe I should ask, but I don't want to pinpoint, how many people here feel like they have a poor or a lower quality of sleep? Okay. So you can make your appointments tomorrow at about 10:30. But during this week, we will talk about how to improve sleep. Because when you improve sleep, you can also improve overall mental health. Just because sleep, when it's an ongoing issue, it can affect your overall perspective, mental health, etc. So that will be part of this week. Yes, go ahead.
The high quality of sleep is that the amount of hours you sleep. I mean, I get
No, how good you sleep.
hours of sleep, and then can sleep anymore. And
Right.
so I do things,
Yeah.
and now I'm tired and go sleep again.
It's kind of the combination of quality and quantity. Because some people can sleep for 8 hours, but it's low quality sleep. And some people sleep for 6 hours, though I do recommend 8. But it's high quality sleep. So there's so many factors involved, but it's not just hitting the 8 hours of sleep. It's what's happening when you're sleeping. How long is your sleep onset? That's how long it takes you to fall asleep from the time the lights are off. How much deep sleep you're getting, which is affected by the time you're actually going to sleep. How much REM sleep you're getting. And so many factors involved. Is your sleep disrupted or not? Are you waking in the middle of the night to use the bathroom? And many people think that doesn't have an effect, but it really, really does. So all of those things are part of getting better sleep. A lot of people have difficulty falling asleep. That's probably the major factor. But for some people, it's no problem falling asleep. It's ongoing disrupted sleep. And that's where stress comes in. So we're going to talk about sleep in more detail this week. But cortisol can definitely be a factor with sleep. Cortisol is like the stress hormone, and it does work on a cycle throughout the day. Cortisol starts going up earlier in the day if everything is working well. And your circadian rhythm, which is like your body's physiological clock, is, let's say your clock's on time. That's not a clinical reference, but your clock is working well. Your cortisol, meaning your energy and your alertness, should go up in the morning. Then it might dip down a little bit. It has 4 main peaks, like going up, down, up again. And then in the evening, cortisol, meaning your alertness, energy, etc., should start coming down, and you're getting ready for bed. Around that time, melatonin, which is the drowsiness or sleep hormone, starts to increase, and you're getting sleepier and sleepier. Then you fall asleep. However, for people who wake up for unknown reasons, not to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, but just they don't know why, and they're waking up at maybe 2 to 3 o'clock in the morning nearly every night. And when I say waking up, I mean actually opening their eyes. They look at the clock, oh darn, it's 2:30 or it's 2 o'clock again, somewhere between 2 and 3. And then they try to fall asleep, and then it might take an hour and a half, and then finally they fall asleep again. Usually their cortisol cycle is off. So their cortisol might be coming down enough for them to fall asleep, but then it's coming back up. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, cortisol is rising instead of 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, and then suddenly they're awake and they're alert. And several reasons for that, but one of them is just stress. Another one is worry, sometimes things that are buried, that are kind of there under the surface, that are kind of triggering cortisol. And usually there's a little bit of like psychological, mental, emotional factor when that person's waking up in the middle of the night, always at around the same time. Frustration, anger, unresolved things. Yes? Sorry, it was...
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I was involved in a noise pollution study many years ago,
Okay.
and we studied condition of sleep and that.
Mm.
If, at certain decibel levels,
Mm.
you secrete adrenaline. You can't not secrete it. I mean, it's just a certain noise level or sound level, you secrete adrenaline.
Mhm.
There are levels of adrenaline if you've got them in your system, you can't go to deep sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so some people are living in a noisy environment where they're never getting deep sleep just because their environment is too noisy.
Yeah. And so I encourage using earplugs, actually, to sleep. But also, when we're cycling through sleep, you actually start in sleep stage 1, which is light sleep. Then your body drops down to sleep stage 2. And then your body drops down into what used to be called stage 3 and stage 4, which is now just N3, which is deep sleep. And then your body drops down into REM. And then after that, you cycle back up to light sleep, stage 1. So you go stage 1, stage 2, deep sleep, REM, and back up, 1, 2, deep sleep, REM, all night long, about every 90 minutes. So if you have a pet, I really dissuade people from sleeping with their pets in the bed, because if that pet is rustling around, let's say, and you're in stage 1, you've cycled back up to stage 1 sleep. And that's just when the pet moves or whimpers or whatever it is.
Walks
You're
across me before it jumps off the bed.
walks on your legs and you're in stage 1, which is light sleep, that's going to disrupt your sleep. And you'll wake up and be like, oh, it's the dog. And then you go back into sleep. But there are certain noises so that's why I recommend earplugs, because that noise when you're in stage 1 might be enough to wake you up before you drop back down. And once you're kind of kicked out of sleep, especially to get up and go to the bathroom, you don't drop down to where you were before. You go back to stage 1. You have to start again, stage 1, stage 2, deep sleep, REM. So earplugs are helpful. There are certain sounds that actually activate the stress response and certain sounds that activate a parasympathetic response. So sometimes listening to music can help you to sleep. I think if I say sleep too much, people are going to get sleepy. So, but yes, noise, definitely a factor. So many reasons why people have difficulty with sleep, which we'll talk about this week. But there's some easy things that you can do that make it better. When it comes to that cortisol response, like always waking up at the same time every night, and it's not because of the dog, it's not because of noise, and it's not because you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, that's a little bit harder. Often there's like a deeper rooted issue there. Unless you're exercising and doing like calisthenics or something like that right before bed. That's an easy answer. But aside from that, that takes a little more digging. Does that make sense? So we'll get more into sleep later this week. But the point is that stress affects sleep. And so we want to deal with stress. When I'm talking about stress, one of the emotions that people feel, and when it goes on, this kind of just becomes, people feel like it becomes part of your identity. You're a fearful person. Ongoing stress causes a worrisome sort of attitude or feeling. Ongoing stress causes anxiety or anxiousness, and that just becomes the way that you interpret or perceive or life. Or how you interpret sleep. Anxious sleep. Oh. Yeah, that was the last picture. That's this picture. I can't sleep. Right. Which is also part of insomnia because people start getting worried about sleeping. Yes. Thinking about sleeping. The interesting thing about fear, worry, anxiousness is we're not always thinking about things today. It's fear, worry, anxiousness. We're ruminating about things in the past. We get fearful and anxious about things in the present. And we get fearful and anxious and we worry about things in the future. Yes, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. Yes, I forgot about your question. Yes.
You might experience stress because of that.
I have some lavender here. You can smell that. It'll bring your stress levels down.
I'm not stressed, but, well, I was still thinking stressed.
I'm not stressed.
You know how, it kind of goes back a little bit, but you live, like, we live pretty stress-free life. At least we think we do.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got things going on in your body. Like,
Yes.
hives and blah, blah, blah.
Oh.
And you said before that there's always an underlying something. So my question is, how do you actually pinpoint to treat the problem? How do you know what it is? I have a girlfriend now who's just ended a marriage and she's going through all kinds of counseling and they're digging up child stuff and this and that. How do you know? Is it, because we had an argument today, we didn't, but is that why I'm stressed or is it because something happened to me when I was 16? How do you, is there an exercise to pinpoint where the damage is so that you know how to fix the damage of the stress?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
If it's ongoing stress, and you use the word damage, so that's a little bit heavier than just some stress, but there,
Stress. Like,
right.
I would say I'm not stressed, but once in a while I get hives. Why do I get hives? And then, someone says, oh, you're stressed. No, I'm not. Am I in denial that I'm stressed?
I think if there's something there that's, let's say, at the root that hasn't been dug up, then usually you know there's something there. You might be doing things, certain activities to try to squash it or to quiet it down. But usually we know there's something, like if it's something from the past, something that happened, you know there's something unresolved. If you suddenly break out in hives and you don't think you're stressed at all, then I would start looking at other factors like, is an allergy? Did I get bitten by mosquitoes and now I'm breaking out in hives? Hives can be a stress response, having said that, but sometimes that's an immediate response. Like, we're having an argument, I'm stressed. Instead of the things that I showed, all of those things can happen as well. A little bit of panic, the accelerated breathing, the sweating, and you can break out in hives as part of a stress response. But if there's something from childhood, early adulthood, etc., or even adulthood that's unresolved, I would say most of us know there's something there. We might not have pinpointed it, but we might be doing things to distract ourselves that indicate to us you're sort of running away or trying to avoid that thing. I don't think when it's discovered, I mean, there are some things like in cognitive behavioral therapy, there's something called the thought record, which is an excellent tool that we studied at school that helps you to get to that thing. But that's part of a process with a counselor, and they'll ask you, think of your most stressful or difficult situation. And then you think of it, and they'll ask you to describe it, and they'll say, do you feel it in your body anywhere? Oh, you know what? My whole back feels tight now. Okay, there's something there. And then they take you down, it's called the arrow, where you keep describing things till you hit kind of like a hot spot. But that's done in conjunction with a counselor. And it's not always the case, but sometimes it is. Yep. Did you have a comment, Henry? Or no? Okay, you're just eating your watermelon? Okay. You're enjoying your watermelon. Awesome. Go ahead.
I was thinking about the hive,
Yes.
like people break out in hives as a reaction to food.
Yep.
For our son, when he gets in the hospital, it gets too hot,
Mm-hmm.
he breaks out.
Yeah. So it could be an allergic reaction. It could be a reaction to getting too many mosquito bites. It could be a reaction to like a dermatitis kind of reaction to certain clothing, material, etc. So hives are a tough one. But it can be a stress reaction as well. Sure.
A good therapist
Certain
picks
foods.
that out.
What's that?
A good therapist will pick
Yes,
out the
yes.
issues by talking.
Exactly. So in that situation, in that therapist relationship, they'll start getting down to the real issue. Did anybody have any other questions? Glenn, did you have a comment? I see you there. You're holding it.
I'm endlessly trying to restrain myself.
Okay. No? No ruminating?
I'm ruminating all the time.
Okay. So stress, I
No
said
stress
that.
there.
No. Stress affects sleep. Stress affects our weight. Stress affects weight over time because stress increases cortisol. Cortisol increases cravings and appetite. And it also affects the hormones that help us to stop eating. That hormone or chemical is called leptin. And then the hormone that makes us hungry, or the chemical that's called ghrelin. And when you're stressed, it's like you get a greater secretion of ghrelin, so you're more hungry, and less leptin, so you're not getting full. So some people, when they're stressed, like in the moment, they lose their appetite completely. But some people, when they're stressed, especially if it's an ongoing situation, they respond by stress eating. And when you're stress eating, it's like you're eating and eating and eating, and you just don't get that sense of satisfaction and fullness because of this leptin, because the leptin levels are low. Stress can affect our attitude and, of course, our happiness. It causes an increase in cortisol, blunts the immune system, makes us more susceptible to disease. But speaking of happiness, there was a study done on happiness, and I'm just wondering, it's interesting to see what they've found to be the most important factor for happiness. Any guesses?
Deciding to be happy is what was an important factor.
Okay, a decision to be happy. Happiness can be a decision for sure. Go ahead.
You're in control of life.
Having that locus of control definitely is a factor. That's a bigger factor for resilience, which is part of happiness. It's something so simple. Yes, go ahead. Okay, very important for happiness as well. I don't think this study was necessarily done on Christians.
Smile. Yeah, smile.
Smiling is something that causes the secretion of the bliss hormones, so that can affect happiness. I noticed nobody said money brings happiness. I was.
Brings sadness too, though.
It can bring a bunch of things. So what they found that affects happiness. Yes, Henry, you're putting your hand up now. Yes.
I'm happy because I'm having a good meal.
Okay, but you're not.
Fantastic.
You're having a wonderful meal, and in what setting? What's the setting for your wonderful meal? Yes, the setting though. Having a wonderful meal with
Friends.
Oh, my brothers and sisters.
with your brothers and sisters, and that is the factor for happiness. It's not necessarily the meal part, but it is actually social interaction. So the greatest factor for happiness that they found was social interaction. And it's not just social interaction, meaning you're having these deep conversations with people. It could be anything. It could be you go into the store and you buy something. I bought a scrunchie for my hair today. And you have a little conversation with the person who's selling it to you. How you doing? I'm doing okay. How are you? And I noticed like in Lillooet, people are like that, which is awesome. In Toronto, it'd be like ding, 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 da, da, da. Nobody, the people don't look at you and you're on your way. Lack of social interaction. So social interaction makes a really big difference. And what they've found with mental health, people tend to isolate. So when people aren't feeling happy or they're feeling depressed or they're feeling anxious, they tend to isolate and go further and further into isolation. And as you go further into isolation, you get away from happiness or lightness. Has anyone had that experience where perhaps something terrible is happening in your life? Maybe a breakup or you lost your job or something like that, and it's just like you're in the dark gray zone, and then you happen to go out to buy a chocolate bar or something like that, something you might buy when you're stressed. And that person's so delightful, the person who's selling it, and you just have a momentary pause where, you know, the clouds split and there's a ray of sunshine, and then you go back into your mood. But just for a second, you're out of the mood through that social interaction. Has anybody felt that?
Yep.
And that's amazing. That's the power of social interaction. Yes.
I read a book on people who are happy. There's a study of people who are happy.
Okay. Glenn, you're probably going to talk about something that's in my presentation in 2 days. But go ahead.
I got a copy of your notes before I.
I think so.
Well, having a clear sense of what makes you happy
Mm.
is important. But actually, two of them that I thought were really good is a person that has gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
Be grateful for things, and if you're not feeling very good, reminding yourself of what you're grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I'm reasonably healthy. I'm still alive, and all whatever you can do. And also, generosity was connected with these people. These are all things people could learn. I just wanted to mention that because there are studies also of people that fit the category, and they have certain characteristics.
The fifth category, you said? They fit the category, yes. So what they found with happiness is there's a certain level of genetic influence, up to 50% of a genetic influence with happiness, as they've done, but this is in my slide presentation tomorrow, as they've done studies, twin studies, like identical twin studies, fraternal twin studies, and twins who are completely separated at birth. So a great deal, but it's only 50% of our disposition, or you could say part of your personality, Whether you're a happier person or more optimistic is genetic. But then the other 50% is in our control. So you could actually be someone who wasn't born to be an extremely happy person, but that other 50% is within your control, your perceptions, choosing to be happy, gratitude, etc. And you can live a very happy life. Yes?
I find that everywhere, I've made a point in my life, everywhere I go, I talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end of the day, you have more smiles and laughs around you than by not talking to them.
Right. Oh, I might practice that myself, even though I do know social interaction is a key to happiness. Yeah, definitely can make a difference. There was a study that was done on doing 5 main things, even 3 out of the 5. It might have been a 21-day study. And at the beginning of the study at a university, they were asked to fill in different scales, like a survey. One of them is similar to the Hamilton Anxiety Survey. Another one's like the PHQ-9. So these are surveys on your level of depression, or level of anxiety, level of happiness. And then after 21 days, they were asked to fill in the surveys again. And what they noticed was that their anxiety levels came down, depression came down, and happiness went up. So what did they do during the 21 days? You have to come on day number 3 to find out. No, just kidding. I'll tell you now, but you mentioned gratitude. So what they did was every day they had to write down 5 things that they're grateful for. And they had to do 3 main things. Write down 5 things that they're grateful for. Secondly, they had to write, like journal, about 1 positive experience. And it could just be 2 or 3 sentences. But I'll explain why this works, as a matter of fact, after. 1 positive experience. And then the third thing they had to do was something outside of themselves. So the things they're grateful for, that's between them and the paper. Positive experience, it's their own recall. But this third thing, they had to say thank you to someone. So now they're kind of reaching outside of themselves. And this thank you could be a text. The other person didn't have to respond. They just know they're sending a thank you out there. A text, it could be an email, it could be a phone call, and it could be thank you for something minimal, like thank you so much for bringing out that beautiful food tonight. I really appreciated that you brought it right to the table. Or it could be something really deep. Thanks so much for 5 years ago helping me as I went through divorce and relocated to Ontario. That was a really difficult time in my life. I don't know if I ever thanked you for being there. Like, it didn't matter what the thank you was. What mattered was that they sent it. So those 3 things. 5 things you're grateful for, positive experience, and a thank you. And at the end of the 21 days, they redid the surveys. Anxiety went down, depression went down, happiness went up. The interesting thing about the positive experience, I don't know if you'll know the answer. Maybe you might. But why do you think writing about 1 positive experience every day for 21 days made a difference?
You're getting the habit of thinking like that.
Okay. Oh, well,
It's good for you.
yeah. What way were you thinking?
What would
You're getting in the habit of thinking what way?
in a positive way, if you're writing down positive things,
Yes.
you're getting in the habit of thinking of positive things. I used to work as a teacher at one point, and I used to get the children each morning,
Mm-hmm.
just do a quick round, and we had, I suggested they say something that's new and good. And I can remember one of the students said, how about new and bad? And they said, no, you got the rest of the day for that.
Right.
One thing that's positive, and I think it starts them with a positive mind frame.
Okay.
So
That's part of it.
the habit of being positive is in this.
Okay.
That talking to
It's the key to
talking
it.
to people, I do the same thing wherever I go. It bothers Arthur sometimes that I'm talking to the people that we're paying money to.
Which is that's a key to happiness, social interaction. Go ahead, Terrence.
Part of it.
For many as well, and you have to think about it positively right now.
Okay.
Much greater.
Yep. So when you're writing about it, it's being etched into your mind. You're reliving the experience when you're writing about it. Anyone else? There's actually a neuroscience or a brain explanation. Go ahead.
Isn't there a thing, I remember this in one of the
Okay. That's actually a very loose way, not completely accurate. Normally it takes 6 to 9 weeks to create a habit. So it's not 21 times, it's 21 days. So the idea was if you do something for 21 days, you create a new habit. But studies have shown it's more like 6 weeks to create a new habit. But something is changing in your brain. And during the 21 days, you're activating an area in your brain. So just as you said, Glenn, you start thinking that way, but it's beyond thinking. It's like your brain starts seeking out the positive thing. What am I going to write about tonight? And you might think, you know what? This, hopefully you guys will be thinking, this is my positive experience.
Yeah, I have a gratitude journal, and that's every day I'm thinking, "Ooh, this
What is it? This is a good thing to write about. But why does it become after 3 weeks? It does kind of become a habit, but it's more because we have an area in our brain called the reticular activation system, or the reticular activity system, the RAS. That area in the brain is in charge of filtering what we pay attention to. So right now there are probably so many things happening that my brain could focus on, where everyone's sitting, the sound that's coming out maybe of the kitchen. As soon as I say that, I hear that sound more. The feeling of my shoes on my feet, what's happening here in my peripheral vision of seeing the screen over there. Like, so many things I probably can't say them all that my brain is interpreting. So this area in the brain is like a filter system. It's only going to filter and focus on what is important right now and kind of dull out everything else. As soon as I start writing about that positive experience today, I'm training that area in the brain. It's important. So now the next day, my brain's going to be looking for the positive experience and filtering out the other things. This is it. This is a positive experience. The next day, my brain's looking for the positive experience and not looking for the negative, as you said. And before you know it, it becomes the way that you're viewing life. Your brain's ongoingly, you're training your brain to look for the positive. And then when you write it, you're re-experiencing the positive. And just as we did at the very beginning, where I asked you to close your eyes and think of something positive, and then you felt better, you re-experience that positive thing in your own mind. So when you're writing about it, you're re-experiencing the positive. You're getting the flow of all those bliss hormones again. And the next day, you've just helped to train your brain through writing, feeling it again. The next day, your brain's looking for that thing. It's kind of like when you buy a car. I bought an orange car, and I thought it was unique, and there aren't a lot of these tangerine bright orange cars. Of course, when I started driving my tangerine orange car, there are tangerine cars all over the place. So when people say to me, "Oh, I love the color of your car, that's unique," I think, yeah, but I think, no, actually, you just don't see it. I see them everywhere. You don't see them, but they're there. And that's kind of like that area in the brain. Because that car became important to me, my RAS starts seeing tangerine cars everywhere where I didn't see them before. So your brain will work that way with the positive experiences. You'll see positive everywhere. And so that's one of the things that can also help just with our own mental attitude. It's like a practice, though. So you're training your brain, so it's going to take a while. In this study, it was 21 days. I don't know, maybe it's faster for the way the RAS works as opposed to something like quitting smoking or quitting coffee, etc. But I would encourage everybody to try that. You could even try it at the beginning of the week and tell me how you're doing at the end of the week. I'll ask you on Friday. Maybe I'll ask you right now, what were the 3 things? What's the first thing? Writing down 5 things you're grateful for. The second thing? Yeah, writing down your positive experience. And you don't have to, if you want to, you could really get into it, which is wonderful. Or it could just be 2 sentences. But better if you re-experience it. And the third thing? Yeah, exactly. Email, text, phone call, it could be personal, face to face. Awesome. You're doing it now? You're sending out a group email to everybody?
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you people,
Done.
for being kind to me at some point. Okay. So I said that one of the things that that encourages happiness, at least in these studies, was social interaction. And if you think of the opposite of that, one of the things that makes it challenging for people in terms of mental health is isolation. And there's more and more isolation, I would say, happening now in different places where people are living their lives online through their telephone, not actually seeing someone's face or interpreting.
We know that the suicide levels went up during the COVID lockdown.
Oh, now we're getting to my next slides.
Okay, that's part of it because I read your notes. But anyways, that is, apparently there's research that shows that that's the case.
Yes, exactly. In 2013, an estimated 3 million Canadians aged 18 years or older reported that they had a mood and or anxiety disorder. 2013. Obviously, long before the pandemic. More than a quarter, 27%, reported that their disorders affected their life quite a bit or extremely in the previous 12 months. They're 18 years or older. Worldwide surveys were done in 2020 and 2021. So now we're talking about during the pandemic. They found higher than typical levels of stress, insomnia, anxiety, and depression. So one of the things that happened during the pandemic was there was more isolation. And mental health conditions went up. A lot of people were having difficulty sleeping, anxiety was high, depression was high, stress levels were high.
More suicide and,
By 2022, levels lowered, but so it seemed like we're coming out of the pandemic then by 2022, 3 years ago. And it's really not that long ago where everything kind of went back to normal. Levels lowered, but they were still higher than they were before 2020. Though feelings of distress about COVID-19 may come and go, these feelings are still an issue for many people. That's from the Mayo Clinic in April 2024, just over a year ago.
and
So,
that I wanted to make was that
yes.
the number of people that use drugs increased enormously. The number of people overdosing in British Columbia was higher through the whole
Mm.
levels of COVID.
Yeah.
More people were killing themselves by being drug addicts or just killing themselves than were dying
Right.
from COVID.
Higher suicide rates, higher drug abuse, higher alcohol abuse, and higher mental health conditions. And are all of those things correlated? Most likely. And so that is seen as the beginning of the mental health, let's say, epidemic or pandemic. And it really, really ramped up during COVID. And we're not quite where we were, even according to the Mayo Clinic, prior to COVID in terms of mental health. And this is from the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. It was a study that was done on anxiety and COVID, the influence of COVID-19 pandemic on social anxiety, a systemic review. So social anxiety is actually a classification of anxiety where people aren't comfortable being around other people. So these people, you could call them, some people see it as being introverted, but it's beyond being introverted. Being around other people makes them nervous, tends to drain their energy. They're uncomfortable, even physically in their bodies. And social anxiety really went up during the pandemic. Suddenly everyone's isolated, and then now you have to interact with people. So if anxiety was high before, maybe generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety became a factor. Taken together, the research suggests that social anxiety, either before the pandemic or arising due to the pandemic, has contributed to a variety of negative mental health outcomes related to social anxiety in general. So things just became worse. If you had anxiety prior to the depression, we're looking at that word. If you had anxiety prior to the pandemic, pre-pandemic. Then it became worse during the pandemic, and sometimes anxiety turned into social anxiety. If you did not have anxiety prior to the pandemic, then a lot of people began to experience anxiety, especially social anxiety, during the pandemic. Go ahead, Janie.
From the fear as well as isolation. Like, if you're sitting beside Crystal and you're afraid she's going to sneeze on you and give you a deadly disease,
Okay.
you know, would it,
Oh, that's a good example. I didn't think of like the fear of catching the. Right. Yeah. I mean, I think fear was definitely part of it. Not particularly the social anxiety part, but just fear in general. Like, are we all going to? Mm-hmm.
even some Aboriginal people who were literally afraid of catching this because it was put as such a deadly disease.
I wouldn't just say some, I would say most people at the beginning were afraid. So let's say you're afraid or something like COVID-19, not to talk too much about it, seems to be a threat, then what would happen in your body? Which is called the fight or flight response. Thank you. But what if you're in fight or flight for 3 years?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So I was saying that stress affects mental health. So imagine being in fear in a fight or flight kind of response every day for 3 years.
I'm thankful it didn't happen to me that way, but I
Yeah,
know
it could.
that it would.
There's people,
And
there's people right now that are still in it.
right,
I mean, there's people that get angry really quickly or whatever, if you even bring up any issues around it.
right.
So it's still on.
So
They really did, they're still doing it.
So I think people were afraid during the pandemic. So many different factors happened there, but elevated stress levels, ongoing, affecting mental health, fear of other people. So now you're isolating and you're not getting that social interaction, which is so important for happiness. Just the idea that you have to self-preserve as well. Then sleep, affecting sleep, like how long is this going to go on? Is our life ever going to be normal again? So people are now having insomnia. Sleep affects mental health as well. So I think it was just like a soup of all of these factors, which led to more mental health conditions that, and it's still like that. We're still not. Pardon me? Oh, I can't comment on that.
But they has though, because they sell all these drugs that help you, you know what I mean?
Mm.
You can't comment on that though.
I can't comment on that either.
Healthy, rich
Yes.
people
Yeah,
do.
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, how do you break the cycle? Well, if they're paranoid over cleanliness, then that might be more OCD. And if it was pre-pandemic, then it might have gotten worse during the pandemic, but most likely it was prior to the pandemic. So that's a little bit different than anxiety, though it does fall under the category of anxiety, which we're just about to talk about, the different classifications. So, yes, please. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh-oh. Yes. Can be a bummer, you could say, right?
I can get you some mushrooms.
I can't talk about that either, but,
Well, they are doing a test now on.
oh, I know, psilocybin,
Microdot mushrooms.
microdosing,
Yes, it
Yes.
does help, they say.
yes.
And that-
But it's actually on my list of drugs that
Okay.
I can't prescribe or really discuss. But
I know.
even though I do have my pharmaceutical licensing, prescribing license for BC, but that's on our no-go list. But yes, Janie, you're living with someone who, having said that, there are lots of studies being done on it at the moment. Living with someone who's always down. Difficult because we're so affected by our environment. And as a matter of fact, our environment's at the point where it can change our genes. which is called epigenetics. So what do you do? Well, I'm now thinking of Viktor Frankl, not to say that these two things are analogous, like living with someone who's down and being in a prison camp. But so I'm not saying those things are the same, but he was able to come up with his own narrative. So I think it depends on if you're able to get that objectivity where I'm a separate person than you are, very difficult, especially if you're cohabitating, because they found in studies actually with couples that couples begin to become so much like each other that after many years they look the same. But they only look the same if it's a happy marriage. They don't look the same if it's not a happy marriage. And pets and their owners begin to look the same as well.
The old dog.
And it's very true. So I think with someone who's down all the time, I mean, you could try to help them, but part of the, bye, have a good evening. Bye, nice meeting you, Arthur. Part of it might be just trying to get to the point where you're able to see there's a space between that person and myself. And I'm more objectively seeing this relationship, who they are and who I am, and then working on your own identity, if that helps. I'm not saying that's easy, because definitely very hard. Yeah. Any other questions? Is it going to be quiet now? Oh, okay, no comment. So let's get into classifications. Classifications.
That's why
So
he's down.
this part is just more discussing what are the common mental health conditions. So in terms of depression, there's major depressive disorder, dysthymic disorder, meaning that, and this isn't as talked about as commonly, milder depression, but lasts for 2 years. Dysthymic means you don't have a lot of ups, you don't have a lot of downs. You're kind of just living within this space for over 2 years. Major depressive disorder is I had just talked about feeling a little bit low, but then you have a good conversation with someone and you're able to come out of it. The clouds part for a little bit before you think about that thing. With major depressive disorder, then you're always in that state regardless of what's happening. Postpartum depression, what happens with women after they've given birth because of hormonal changes. Seasonal affective disorder, very, very common, especially in Canada. So happy during the summer and tend to get what is called the winter blues. And that has to do, I like the winter blues better than sad, but basically a little more melatonin being expressed during the day. Melatonin is the sleepiness hormone, and a little less serotonin being expressed during the day. I actually have a patient, right, she's not my patient anymore, who she got a happy lamp and it made all the difference. Like a 10,000 lux lamp. She would look at it every morning during the winter. She was my patient in the winter. I don't think I said anything that made her identifiable. And it really made a difference, just the happy lamp. So the light coming from the happy lamp is kind of like emulating the light of the sun. So it's like she's looking at the sun every day and causing more serotonin to be secreted, cutting off melatonin, and she felt much, much happier. So that's an easy treatment for seasonal affective disorder. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder in women just before their period, but this is beyond just normal PMS. And I think that's it. What are the things that are contributing factors for depression? Genetics play a role. Often if there's a family history, meaning in 25%, if there's a first-degree relative with generalized anxiety disorder, depression and anxiety tend to go hand in hand. It might be you're more depressed with anxiety, but anxiety can kind of sit on its own. So often there's depression with some anxiety, but some people have anxiety, no depression, if that makes sense. A mutation in a particular gene called the MTHFR reductase gene, so that's also part of genetics. Your environment, diet and supplements. We're going to talk about which diet and supplements can affect depression or experiencing depression. Low vitamin D, low B1, or even low B12. Psychosocial factors, such as where you're living, who you're living with. Chronic stress, and something that Glenn said, just trauma from the past that has not been addressed, or you're not getting the relief or that's settled from the past, or trauma in the present can cause depression. Other causes and contributions, as both DNA, methylation, and folate are important for mental health. Reduction of the activity of this particular gene, or if you have a folate deficiency, so let's say a B9, vitamin B9 deficiency, they have been associated with an onset of many psychiatric diseases or conditions, schizophrenia, bipolar, autism, ADHD. Not saying that just taking B9 can fix it, but it could be a contributing factor for what people are experiencing. And we're going to see that in a study that I want to talk about, a study where certain vitamins were given to people who were experiencing depression or anxiety. And we'll find out what happened. Causes and contributions, medical conditions, and endocrine condition. So this might be something more like a thyroid condition, which can really affect mood. Substance abuse. Cardiac conditions, contributor to anxiety, so people who have arrhythmia or ongoing heart palpitations can feel very anxious just because they feel it in their heart. Inflammation in the nerves or in the brain, neuroinflammation as well. What does depression present as? So this is nearly any type of depression, whether it's major depressive disorder or whether you're just experiencing depression because of a situation. A lot of people have sleep disturbances. Difficult to fall asleep, or they might be sleeping all day, or just ongoing lots of sleep or very little sleep, disrupted sleep. Inability to feel pleasure regardless of what's happening in your life. A low mood or depressed mood, changes in appetite or weight, and that can go up or down, meaning you completely lose your appetite and lose weight, or ongoing eating and gaining weight. Psychomotor problems, so when people are depressed, they tend to move slower. They might lose a little bit of that eye-hand coordination as well. General lack of energy or just feeling tired all the time. Poor concentration, also known as brain fog. Feelings of worthlessness, feelings of guilt, very common when someone's feeling depressed. And finally, suicidal ideation, which also is part of depression. So depression can present with any or sometimes all of these different symptoms or things that we might experience. So this was a study that was done by the Canadian government, and it was a study on young people. I think they were between the ages of 18 and 25 from what I remember. So I think that was the age. And who had anxiety or depression. And this is how they managed their disorders. So it's interesting because some of, let's say, the answers or tools that we can use came out in this study. 2 and 3 of the respondents, 64%, reported that they exercised, or they participated in physical activity. And the majority of these individuals, 98%, stated that they continued to do so at least 2 to 3 times a week, even after the study date or duration. So a simple thing that really changes our attitude and our mood is just exercise. But the challenging thing is getting yourself out there to exercise. I would say the most simple exercise to do that still has a really strong impact is basically walking. walking. It doesn't have to be running. It's tough on the knees for people. It doesn't have to be swimming. Though swimming's amazing and really great for your joints. You'll still have that lovely kind of euphoric feeling, but pools are hard to come by sometimes. So walking, just going out, continuous walking. People ask me about steps. Like, I think counting your steps is fantastic when it comes to maintaining weight loss, or if you're on a weight loss program. But when it comes to alleviating depressed mood, it's more continuous walking as opposed to getting 500 steps in here and then sitting down and some more steps in there and then you walk to your car and that kind of thing. You want continuous walking. And I'm not saying counting steps bad is great, but this is particularly for shifting mood. 71% reported they adopted good sleep habits, and 93% reported that they still continue to do so. What are the good sleep habits? We'll talk about it later, ongoingly this week, as we talk about sleep and sleep hygiene. Very important and really can help shift mood if you're consistent. Less than a third reported that they have developed a care or a crisis plan. That's especially if you're considering suicide. 43% reported that they've engaged in reflective or meditative practices. That could even be something like writing down the things that were positive about your day. A reflective practice. 83% said they've educated themselves about their disorder. So that's something like what we're doing today. And throughout this week, we're learning, and then you're also learning different tools and techniques that can be effective. And I think this is the last 14% of respondents with a mood disorder reported they've used light therapy, as I mentioned, to manage their disorder. Very effective, especially for something like seasonal affective disorder. But it could also be effective for depression in some cases. Light therapy, so that's something like a happy lamp. And I think the amount of lux that's recommended is 10,000. And you don't want to stare directly at it like this. It has to be like, let's say, arm's length. And
That red light, right?
not red light, it's like a blue-white light. And it's only for 30 minutes a day. But I recommend that if you're thinking of it, look it up, do a little more research than what I've just said here before you use one. And you can buy I even saw, I think they have them at Costco on the internet. Different types of anxiety. We talked about social anxiety disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. So this is beyond worrying. Panic disorder, that's when people have a panic attack, agoraphobia, plus or minus with panic disorder. That's like a fear of people, fear of going outside. Post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder falls under the umbrella of anxiety, so OCD, as you'd said. But OCD can kind of be manifested in several ways. It might be compulsive about cleaning or something like that. The obsessive part could also just be mentally obsessive. So you're catching the same thoughts and obsessing about one particular thought that just keeps coming back and keeps coming back. So sometimes it's something physical, sometimes it's a thought. Specific phobias, a social phobia, a phobia of dogs. I have a friend who has a phobia of spiders. And I really didn't think it was a phobia until I was with her when she saw a spider. And it was not, this is how I know it was a phobia and not a fear, because she turned into a completely different person. Like screaming, irrational, like normal, and suddenly, bah! And I was like, wow, okay. That you said you were afraid of spiders, but that wasn't a fear. So I finally caught that spider, and I don't remember if I released it or terminated it. But that was the first time I really viewed a phobia in full action, you could say. Comorbidities. So sometimes with anxiety, there could be depression or dysthymia, meaning an ongoing kind of lower mood. IBS, as I said. So IBS stands for irritable bowel syndrome. So with IBS, sometimes there are gut issues as well as anxiety, both at the same time. Other anxiety disorders, so if you have generalized anxiety disorder, you might also have social anxiety disorder. Personality disorders as well, substance abuse with anxiety, and I think that just comes out of people searching for a way to deal with the anxiety. Chronic pain, as I said, with anxiety, people tend to be very tense. And so a lot of the pains in the back, upper shoulders, and neck, because with that tension, there's a lot of tightness in the muscles. And migraines or headaches, the interesting thing with that type of tension, this muscle, the top of this muscle here is the trapezius muscle. It's like a giant diamond going down, right down the back. Top of it's here. It goes right up the back of the neck and it connects with the occiput right at the back of the head. So if this area is tight and shortened, then it pulls on the back of the head and you get a headache. Migraines are a little bit different than a headache, as a migraine normally lasts for longer, but part of it is that tension and pulling on the back of the back of the skull, you could say. Presentation of anxiety, excessive worry, excessive anxiety, being apprehensive about something that may or may not happen, but you feel like it's probably going to happen, but the likelihood of it happening is very low. I had a patient, my first patient with generalized anxiety disorder. I was working in a hospital just outside of Toronto, and it was during my internship year. So as a naturopathic doctor, you have to do 1 year of internship, which is kind of similar. It's just a year where you're seeing patients, but you're supervised. So I worked in a hospital, I worked in a clinic, and I worked in a separate clinic as well for a year on rotation. And this patient came and said that she was feeling anxious. So at the time I was doing acupuncture, so she was lying on the massage table and I put the needles in. And normally when I put the needles in, people immediately go, oh, that feels so good. And within 5 minutes, they're asleep on the table. So I put the needles in, I'm charting, expecting her to fall asleep, and she didn't fall asleep. And I was like, well, do you feel more relaxed? Not so much, I'm worried. I said, oh, okay. What are you worried about? And sometimes when people are on the table, that's the time where they talk to you, and it turns into a counseling session sometimes where they'll tell you like all kinds of things come out during that 1 hour. So it wasn't uncommon to ask what somebody worried about. She's worried about her son. I said, okay, why are you worried about her son? Well, I'm just worried about his well-being. I want him to be safe. I said, oh, okay, well, why wouldn't he be safe? And she said, I'm worried about him being like caught and killed in a hurricane. I said, oh, okay. Does he live in a hurricane area? Like, is he in, I don't know, the islands somewhere that are hit by a hurricane? I'm immediately thinking, you know, he's somewhere during hurricane season. And she said, no, he lives in Toronto. And I said, okay, has he ever been in a hurricane? No. Okay. Is he moving to a hurricane area? No. Okay. I said, well, why do you think he'd be caught in a hurricane? Well, I'm just afraid something terrible is going to happen to him and that he'll be killed. And she pictures it maybe being a hurricane. Okay, this is the point where I said, okay, excuse me for a moment. And I went to talk to my supervisor, discussed it with her, and I said, I think this, it was a new patient. I think this patient has generalized anxiety disorder because she's very worried and apprehensive about something, expecting something that's very unlikely to occur. So my supervisor came over, talked to her about a few things, and said, I think that your analysis is right. She probably has generalized anxiety disorder. So we asked, does she have a history of it, etc. And it came out that she does have GAD, or generalized anxiety disorder. It doesn't present that way for everyone, but for some people, it's this expectation of something terrible happening, and no matter what, they can't get rid of that feeling. So it's beyond worry. For anxiety, for it to be a diagnosis, it has to occur more days than not for at least 6 months. And it could affect work, it could affect school. It's just this difficult to control type of worry. Like you're trying to say that's irrational or that's not logical, but that worry just keeps coming up. And so it's a little bit different. I don't know if you can see this. A little bit different than just worried. It can affect you physically. So some people have dizziness, decreased sex drive, irritability as well. I think the decreased sex drive is because during anxiety, you're at a little bit more of an elevated fight or flight level, so a little bit more stressed. And sex drive tends to go down when you're stressed, increased muscle tension. Sometimes people experience rapid breathing, heart palpitations. During a panic attack, someone could feel like they're having a heart attack and go to the ER saying, I'm having a heart attack, because they have chest pain, heart palpitations, shortness of breath. But it's actually an anxiety attack. Blood pressure goes up. Maybe some of those stomach issues, nausea, diarrhea, etc., tremors, numbness, and so on. So there are a lot of physical symptoms that come with anxiety. It's an emotional state commonly caused by the perception of real or just perceived danger that threatens the security of an individual. Anxiety disorder is persistent. Severe anxiety symptoms tend to be irrational, so irrational fears, like this lady had an irrational fear. That's not always the case, with significant impairment in their normal daily function. So she had a lot of stress and a lot of muscle pain, so I was expecting I'll just put the needles in, her whole body's going to relax, her nervous system relaxes, and that's not what was happening. She still felt quite tight. I think the muscle pain was still there, and she got kind of more worked up talking about the anxiety, and I said, this is just going in the wrong direction. Like the acupuncture is normally effective, so it was not a normal situation of stress. People feel restlessness, feeling keyed up or on edge all the time. They get tired easily, find it difficult to concentrate, or sometimes just your mind goes completely blank. Sometimes the mind going blank is part of a panic attack. More irritable, muscle tension, as I said, and sleep disturbances. Finding it hard to fall asleep, finding it hard to stay asleep. They sleep but wake up feeling like it was just an unsatisfying sleep, restless throughout the entire night. So now I want to talk, and we have a little bit of time left, half an hour, about some protocols or treatments that can help with some of the mental health challenges that we've talked about. So things that can help. I would say there are 4 main lifestyle changes that can really help to shift some of these conditions. And I'm not saying that there isn't a place for pharmaceuticals, but I'm presenting some of the non-pharmaceutical lifestyle changes. I'm also not guaranteeing that they work, but based on studies, they can be effective. So the first thing is decreasing stress. And then the question would be, how do you decrease stress? So we talked about some tools at the beginning, but I want to ask you, and of course we're going to talk more about stress as the week goes, but how do you decrease stress? Or what things do you do? Anyone? You talk to people and that decreases stress. Awesome. You play cards? Okay. You're knitting. Oh, the knitting comes in again for smoking cessation and reducing stress. Yes. You do what? Do puzzles. Okay. Excellent. Go ahead. Right. Going out and being surrounded by nature. There's something that became really popular in Japan and then beyond Japan called forest bathing, which I think in Japanese is Shinrin-yoku. So just being surrounded by trees. The oxygen that's given off by the trees, etc., helps to decrease stress. Anything else? Gardening. Pets make a big difference. They've also done studies on petting pets. Like that's where the idea of therapy dogs came in. Just petting a pet can really calm your nervous system. Gardening, putting your hands in the earth, Some people think it's because of the grounding effect, the electromagnetic effect of the ground going through your hands, possibly. But gardening can be very relieving for stress as well. And that's a whole area, grounding sheets, grounding bedding, etc. But great ways to decrease stress. Music as well can help to decrease stress, but music that is where there's disharmony, meaning dissonance, actually increases stress. That might be why young people like it. Like, yeah. But music where there's a lot of harmony tends to decrease stress. There was actually a song that was created and studied for anxiety reduction, which is known as the most de-stressing song in the world, according to psychiatry.com. It was created by a group called Marconi Union, and the name of the song is Weightless. Has anybody heard of the song Weightless? WEIGHTLESS, Weightless. So it's supposed to reduce anxiety by 65%. No singing. Just music, instruments. It might have some binaural beats in it, like a boom, boom kind of thing in the background. But it's supposed to decrease stress and decrease anxiety. And I think the name of the researchers were Mind Body Lab, collaborated with this music group to create this song and then do studies on it to see. Marconi Union. And when I think of it, I always think of macaroni. And then I have to look it up on the internet. Macaroni Union. So it's Marconi Union. And the song's Weightless. Other lifestyle changes that can help to shift mood, improving sleep. So we'll talk about these things this week. How to decrease stress, how to improve sleep. Other factors that can help to shift mood, of course, improving nutrition. So we'll talk about that. And part of improving nutrition also means to improve or fill in the gaps with deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies, and increasing exercise. So 4 lifestyle changes that you can make that can really shift your mood into more of a positive state. Decreasing stress, improving sleep, improving nutrition, and increasing exercise. And we'll talk about each one of those things this week, as well as resilience. Exercise might be the only thing we don't focus as much on, but it pops up throughout. It'll pop up throughout the week. What else can help? And there is the walk through nature. So going for a nature walk can help to reduce stress. The oxygen in the trees, being bathed by the oxygen coming off the trees is a great stress reliever. Other things that can help. Exercise, as I said, this was a study done called The Role of Exercise in Management of Mental Health Disorders, an integrative review. The conclusion was this. In conclusion, aerobic and resistance exercise training hold promise in the treatment and management of mental health conditions, particularly depression and anxiety. And right now I'm forgetting the name of the book. It was a book that was written by a researcher who studied depression, anxiety, and exercise versus depression, anxiety, and pharmaceuticals. And he just wanted to see the impact of exercise on depression and anxiety versus pharmaceuticals. And if I could remember the book right now, I'd tell you so you could read it. But I can't remember. And it's not that my mind's going blank because I'm having a panic attack. But it's a yellow book that talks about exercise as like the pill for depression and anxiety. I have a series of studies that were done on mice and exercise and resilience, but I'll leave those to the end. And if we don't get to it, it'll be something that we talk about tomorrow because I want to get to some of the other tools and techniques. But exercise is a really, really big one. We'll talk about the studies that prove that after. What can help? No, wait till you see what I'm about to say there, Randy. Decreasing caffeine. So eliminating coffee. Because coffee and caffeine is so stimulating, is found when people already have anxiety, that it tends to make people more anxious. So if you already have anxiety, then one of the things you could do would be decrease or even eliminate caffeine. And for people who don't drink coffee, but let's say, or green tea or caffeine, but then suddenly one day you do, has anybody experienced that? Suddenly, like, it's like you're revving, you feel irritated. No, no one?
I just get a headache quite quickly.
Right, which is based on withdrawal. Yeah. Um, yeah. With a lot of water, and you might have sleep disturbances.
Drink water?
Yes. Let's see. I have water in here too. But yes, a lot of water to get past withdrawal. So decreasing caffeine. So decreasing alcohol, decreasing stimulants, reducing stress, as we've already talked about. Those are all factors that can help with anxiety. And there's a particular type of counseling that I'd mentioned earlier called cognitive behavioral therapy. And with this type of counseling, they've found that you'd have to have about 20 sessions. So if you're going every week, that's about 20 weeks. And let's say half a year is 26 weeks. So you're going for, if it's every week, you're going for nearly 6 months. And the interesting thing with CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, one of the reasons, one, that it's so effective with anxiety is because they get you very involved. It's not just talking. At the end of a CBT session, normally you're given homework. You're asked to put it into practice. You're asked to put yourself in a situation and you respond differently. That is a very general description. There's so much more. But CBT, very effective for anxiety, but it's the number of sessions. So you're building as you go, at least 6 months, equal to or greater than 20 sessions to reduce anxiety. And this would be clinical anxiety. What else can help? This was a study that was done for 8 weeks on patients with generalized anxiety disorder, and they did guided meditation. So with guided meditation videos, they used stress reduction tools. They used breathing. What were they? Some of them are right here listed underneath. Breathing meditation. That was also done on PTSD studies. So breathing is so effective on shifting your nervous system out of that anxiety state. And they also found that cognitive behavioral therapy, again, very effective as well. What else can help with anxiety? This was a study, not that I'm encouraging Tai Chi, but this was a study that was done in elderly patients with anxiety disorder. And they were exercising with slow movements called Tai Chi, and it improved their physical health, it improved their mental health as well. So exercise, once again. And it doesn't have to be that exercise in particular. It could be walking as well. What else can help with anxiety? In studies for generalized anxiety disorder, they found that therapeutic massage was very effective. You had to, in this study, they had to go for at least 10 sessions of massage. Isn't that an awesome prescription? Your homework is to go for 10 sessions of massage. During the massage, they were doing deep breathing. So breathing comes in again. They were in relaxing rooms, and they noticed that if they were given a hot towel treatment in the massage, that it increased efficacy as well. So massage with heat in a relaxing room doing deep breathing, 10 sessions. Even seeing this makes me want to go and have a massage. Not that I'm anxious, but it's very effective for reducing stress as well. What else can help with anxiety? Water. Might not be water in the way that you're thinking. That's helpful for withdrawal. But water such as hydrotherapy. The healing effects of water may be effective, especially if pain is part of the picture. So if you have an anxiety disorder that also includes pain, muscle tightness, muscle tension, then hydrotherapy can be very effective for helping. So there have been studies done on whirlpool hydrotherapy, sitting in the whirlpool, very helpful. And there have also been studies on balneotherapy. So balneotherapy is like a hot water treatment where you're adding something to the water, some kind of mineral. Like it could be peat baths, it could be Epsom salts. And in this study, they compared balneotherapy to paroxetine, which is Paxil, which is an SSRI, which is a serotonin reuptake inhibitor, in terms of efficacy and safety in randomized studies lasting 8 weeks. And I hope I included, okay, so I didn't include the results of that study, but I think the results were good, or I wouldn't have put it in here. So my homework's going to be finding the results of the 8-week study on balneotherapy versus an SSRI. So you could actually do it yourself and take Epsom salt baths and let me know how you're feeling at the end of the week. This is part of your homework. What else can be effective? Cold water therapy. So cold water for depression and for the cold water therapy. In this study, they did adapted cold showers. So an adapted cold shower means instead of blasting the cold, you start off maybe warm or quite warm, and you're slowly moving within a few minutes to very cold. 1 to 2 times per day. And the study was done for weeks or even months. And this was from article from Psychology Today, the effects of the cold splash hydrotherapy on depression and anxiety. And at the retreats that I've worked at, we do cold water therapy. And often people are very expressive during those treatments. What else can help? So lavender. Lavender can be very effective. It could be lavender essential oil. You could use dried lavender. It's a natural anxiolytic. An anxiolytic is like an anti-anxiety compound or an anti-anxiety pharmaceutical or substance. And that picture right there is a picture of a diffuser. So with the diffuser, you could have water and you add a few drops of 100% lavender essential oil, and then it diffuses that smell throughout the room, and it's very helpful for bringing anxiety down. It's also helpful for helping with sleep. So if sleep onset is an issue, you're finding it hard to fall asleep, 30 minutes before bed, you could put some lavender in a diffuser, diffuse it in your bedroom, and then when you go to fall asleep, you're breathing in the lavender. As an example today, I actually brought some dried lavender. So a friend of mine went and picked lavender. We hung it upside down. We've been drying it out for about maybe 6 days, maybe a week, so I could bring it to this presentation. So I'm going to pass the lavender around, as some of the petals might fall off. But I'd like you to take a breath in of the lavender and then see how you feel, if you feel a little bit less anxious or more calm. So the lavender is over here. Oh, I feel so much better. So if you could just take it and pass it around. Take the smell. Is it lilac or lavender? Oh. They are lilacs. Okay, so lavender and lilacs.
Are the same?
No, but they're very effective.
Oh, really?
Yes. Lilacs, thank you.
Maybe that's why I'm so mellow. I got one growing up on my bedroom window.
You have lilacs growing outside your bedroom window?
Maybe that's why
It's a lilac. Sorry. Lilacs and lavender. Very, very similar. Okay, don't get the lilac essential oil. Get the lavender essential oil and put it in your diffuser.
you don't have to eat it.
Smells wonderful, right?
Yeah, it does.
I've had them actually in my hotel room, and I've been smelling it before I go to bed.
The other tree outside of it. I have lost vegetables if you want it.
Are they? Is it dried?
No, they're real trees.
Oh, and it's still going? Because I thought most of them started dying.
No. The white ones are still. Even the white ones are still.
That is something really,
Yeah,
So wonderful. Lilacs.
that's a good idea. Just take a little.
So if you have lavender, you have lavender as well. You could,
That's the purple one, isn't it?
yes, you could dry that out and do the same thing. Some people actually take the lavender petals and they'll put it in a little case and then they stick it in their pillowcase. So they're smelling the lavender before they go to bed. But you can do the same thing with lavender essential oil, a few drops on your pillowcase, and then you're smelling it in before you go to bed. The only thing about lavender, it kind of exploded, I would say, in the wellness space maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So there seems to be lavender in everything. You just want to make sure it's 100% if you're buying something and you're going to put a few drops on your pillow or something to help you fall asleep. I also recommend lavender for people who have anxiety during the day. Use a little bit of lavender on their hands. You're smelling it throughout the day, especially if you have a stressful day at work, and it helps to bring anxiety levels down. One of my first patients had generalized anxiety disorder, very young patient, maybe 18 or 19, not with the little bit of delusion of fear like the other lady, but she was just anxious all day and then had a lot of difficulty falling asleep at night. So she and I together did some research on beads, and she wore a beaded bracelet, and the beads were soaked in lavender essential oil. So the beads were natural wood, and what wood soaks up scents. And throughout the day, she would smell the lavender. She was in school and a very hectic schedule as well. Smell the lavender throughout the day. And then at night, she used a diffuser, and she also did a meditative practice of journaling things she was grateful for. And finally, she found that she could fall asleep. And it made a really big difference. So lavender can be very effective. And some of the other things we've talked about, also effective. Okay. What are some of the things that can contribute to depression and some of the things that may help with depression? They found low B12, low B6 independently correlated with a lower mini mental exam. The mini mental exam is more about cognitive function, not necessarily depression, but lower cognitive function, worse depression symptoms. So checking your B12 levels. B6 is very effective for bringing stress levels down as well. So low B12, low B6. What else? Low iron and low B6 were found in groups with panic attacks. So sometimes it might be deficiencies that might be triggering or making conditions worse. Factors that contribute to fatigue. So I put this slide in today and I thought it looked really big on my screen, and now it looks really small up there. But these are some factors, just health factors that might contribute to feeling tired all the time. And sometimes when people feel tired all the time, their mood is low. So one of them might be a thyroid issue that you're unaware of. Maybe hypothyroid, meaning your thyroid's kind of sluggish. T3 and T4 are low, TSH is high, so you'd want to go and get a blood test. Vitamin D deficiency also contributes to brain fog, low energy, ongoing fatigue, poor mood. Vitamin D deficiency. And for some people, it could be a deficiency that goes on even during the summer. And then people who are of a darker skin color, they need even more vitamin D. So getting a blood test to find out what your vitamin D levels are can be helpful. And then taking a supplement. If you're taking a vitamin D supplement, vitamins A, D, E, K, they're all fat soluble, meaning taking an oil with the vitamin D, like a supplement that's liquid, or a gel cap. The gel caps have the oil in. Your body would absorb it. If you're taking the chalky vitamin D tablets, which are normally inexpensive, you're probably not absorbing it unless you take it with oil or with an avocado or something fatty. The drops are better. Yeah. Yeah. I would take it even in the summer. It's also good for bone health. If you're taking vitamin D, then the recommendation now is you also take K2 as well. But we'll get a little more into that. But a lot of the formulations now are D3 plus K2 blended together. Other factors contributing to fatigue or low mood, low B12. So get your B12 checked. Another factor contributing to fatigue or low mood is low iron. Very, very common. And people tend to have ongoing lower moods when their iron levels are low, or if they're anemic, low energy, just not a lot of joy. So a simple blood test can see if that's a contributing factor. And then, as I said, insomnia, sleep issues, etc. If you are taking a vitamin D supplement, because it does make a difference for energy as well as B12, I'd recommend you take it in the morning so it doesn't actually cause sleep issues. So if you're taking vitamin D3, take it in the morning. If you're taking B12, take it in the morning as well. But if you're feeling like your mood is low, or you're tired and you don't have a lot of energy, it's probably worth it to get a blood test and to get these things checked to see if you're deficient or low, and if those are actually contributing factors to what you're experiencing. In this study on major depression or depressive disorder, it was a study where they were given a placebo or a combination of B vitamins. The name of the B vitamin was called Max Stress B. I've never ordered it myself, but it's like a B complex. And it showed significant and more continuous improvements in depression and in anxiety symptoms compared to placebo. The interesting thing with placebo is sometimes placebo actually works because people are thinking, they're expecting they're being given something that's going to work, and it does. It is mind over matter, absolutely, which just shows the power of your thoughts, which brings us right back to where we started tonight. But this is the effect of a vitamin B complex, and the way that a vitamin B deficiency can affect mood. So in this case, it was on depressive symptoms, anxiety symptoms, a very positive and significant effect just by taking a vitamin B multivitamin called Max Stress B. Not that I'm encouraging that, buying that. Low vitamin D, as I said, in one study that was done on depression, where they were looking at low vitamin D status, the people in the study who had the lowest vitamin D had the highest prevalence of depression. We do get a lot of vitamin D in the summer, which is one of the reasons why people feel so much happier in the summer. There are some herbs that are very effective for depression. One of them, St. John's wort, which is here in this picture. The only thing with St. John's wort, you could think of it as the child in the playground that doesn't like to play with other children. So if you're taking anything else, then you want to be very careful. St. John's wort is fine on its own, but it can affect other medications. So I don't usually recommend taking St. John's wort if you're taking a pharmaceutical medication. And sometimes it doesn't even go together with other herbs or other supplements. So you'd have to do a little bit of research in taking St. John's wort. It can be affected by grapefruit juice as well. So I wouldn't take St. John's wort and grapefruit juice together. Saffron has been studied in studies versus fluoxetine, which is Prozac, and also can be very effective on mood, depression, anxiety. Prozac is one of the very first SSRIs that came out on the market. The interesting thing about saffron, so basically can help you to feel happier, but it can also affect blood pressure in a good way. So it can reduce blood pressure. If you have low blood pressure, you don't want to take saffron for mood. Lavender, as I've said, this was a 4-week study where they compared 5 grams of lavender to Celexa, which is citalopram, also an SSRI. It had a more significantly, statistically significant impact on depression than the actual SSRI did, on depression in particular, and no increase in side effects. Passion flower, such a beautiful, beautiful flower. Again, with these particular flowers, you don't want to combine them with the pharmaceutical drugs. So if you're on an SSRI, whether it's Prozac or Zoloft or Selexet, then you don't want to take that plus one of these. Passion flower can be very effective for anxiety or insomnia. And you could get it either in a supplement form, meaning like more of a pill form. I like to use it as a tea because then people can sip it throughout the day. The only thing with passion flower is it can also help with sleep. So if you're using it for anxiety, you want to take it lightly, sipping it throughout the day. If you find you're getting sleepy, then you want to shift that to you're taking passion flower in the evening to help you to sleep. People respond differently. If anxiety is very, very high, then it's great because it'll bring anxiety levels down and then you can function throughout the day. If you just have a little bit of anxiety, then you're going to get tired. So I use it for both anxiety and I use it for patients with insomnia. And if we're using it for insomnia, we do it in the evening after work when they're not going to be driving. If it's for anxiety, then that means that their anxiety is really high and we'll just use a little bit of tea during the day to bring it down, or passion flower as a supplement. The way that we eat can have a very strong effect. This was a study done on the Mediterranean diet, and they found that it decreased depression in patients who had diabetes. But we're going to talk a little more about nutrition as the week goes on. And I see that we literally have about 2 minutes left. So I'll just finish and then we'll take questions. This is, I said that changing nutrition makes a difference. This was a study on the restriction of meat, fish, and poultry in omnivores. They found that it improved mood. Restricting meat, fish, and poultry. I am a plant-based practitioner, so I have to avow that. And I only use plant-based meal plans, and I find that they're very effective for my patients. Another study called the Attica study, less meat, less sweet, was equal to less anxiety in that study. And we are now at our final slide, and then I can ask if there are any questions. I just want to encourage everyone, thank everybody for coming out tonight. You are on the road to better health just from being here. So thank you to everyone for being here. And if anybody has any questions, I think we have a couple minutes for questions now.